of a new member. Item number 4, confirmation of minutes.
Leader of Government Business.
The ceremonial state opening of the first session of the 10th Parliament held at the Grenada Trade Center on Friday, 27 April 2018. Take note.
Honorable members, the question is that the minutes of the first session of the 10th Parliament held at the Grenada Trade Center on Friday, 27 April 2018 be taken as read. Those who are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the said minutes of the proceedings 7th April 2018 be confirmed.
Honorable members, the question is that the said minutes be confirmed. Those who are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that the minutes of the proceedings of a sitting of the House of Representatives held at the Grenada Trade Center on Tuesday, 15th May 2018 be taken as read.
Honorable members, the question is that the minutes of the sitting of the House of Representatives held at the Grenada Trade Center on Tuesday, 15th May 2018 be taken as read. Those who are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the said minutes of the proceedings of a sitting of the House of Representatives held at the Grenada Trade Center on Tuesday, 15th May 2018 be confirmed.
Honorable members, the question is that the said minutes be confirmed. Those who are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the minutes of the proceedings of the joint sitting of Parliament to open this new Parliament building at Mount Weldale, St. George, on Tuesday, 21st June 2018 be taken as read.
Honorable members, the question is that the proceeding of the joint sitting of the Parliament and to open the new Parliament building at Mount Weldale, St. George, on Thursday, 21st June 2018 be taken as read. Those who are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that the said minutes of the proceedings of the joint sitting of Parliament to open the new Parliament building at Mount Weldale, St. George on Thursday, 21st June 2018 be confirmed.
Honorable members, the question is that the said minutes be confirmed. Those who are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Item number 5, messages from the Governor General. Item number 6, announcements by Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, I think one of our members, the parliamentary representative for St. Andrew Northwest, is not here today. She has called to ask that she be excused from the sitting. I want to welcome members to this second sitting of the first session of the 10th Parliament, and especially welcome you to the new home of the Parliament, the place where the people's business would be addressed. Honorable members, as I sat here looking on, I look on the side and I realize that the people whom you are elected to serve are watching down at you. So it is saying that the master is really the servant of the people, and the people are looking down with expectation that there would be renewed vigor in your deliberation and in your effort to handle the business. I urge you, honorable members, not to take this lightly. You now have your own home where the people's business would be attended to. I am not sure if all the members of the House of Representatives have toured the building to make sure that they are acquainted with it. I would invite you to do so before the end of this day. Honorable members, let me advise you that your presence here is not your own doing. It's the doing of the people of this nation. It's the doing of Almighty God. I also urge you to make sure you are fully acquainted with the standing orders of the House of Representatives, which is your guide so that there will be smooth operation in the conduct of the business of this House. I want to at this time express my appreciation to the Trade Center management for having accommodated us for the long time that they have done so. Many times having to put off other engagements so as to facilitate the Parliament. And so we lift our hearts to them. Now we have our own place, so we can call our meetings when God permit we want. So once that is done, it would mean that this place would be an active, busy place. And I want us to remember to remind our constituents that this is their house. I was speaking with someone only on Sunday who has traveled from the United States and seen this wonderful building, asked the taxi person who was driving, what is this building up there? And they said, that's the president's house. So she wanted to know, get a chance to visit the president's house. And I said, but we don't have a president in Grenada. You're talking of the House of Parliament. She said, it looks so much like the White House. So we have to remind them that this is their house, the House of Parliament. So, honorable members, I wish you a very fruitful day, productive, and may you enjoy the sitting in your new house. If there are any problems with your chairs, I know you are upset that you have not yet received all your computers and you still have to deal with paper. We are coming to that and we will be there pretty soon. Thank you.
Item number 7, presentation of petitions. Item number 8, presentation of papers and reports from select committees.
Leader of government business.
Mr. Speaker, in committee single of one particular institution. I won't be commenting in general, but you are the concerned. But Mr. Speaker, we had to walk through various institutions in order to hold a session of the meeting of the House of Representatives. and that is particularly, Mr. Speaker, the Anglican High School. Just about the budget time, Mr. Speaker, and just around Christmas, they hold their graduation. And we discussed at some occasions there were clashes, but Mr. Speaker, thereafter, they would call, the principal would call, recognizing the importance of a meeting of Parliament. But we also recognize that the school has its role to play, and the parents and guardians and students really deserve and need their day. And Mr. Speaker, we have, since the first occasion when we were not aware, every incident runs smoothly, Mr. Speaker. We will, and they, in months in advance, will either put the day forward or backward to accommodate us and vice versa, Mr. Speaker. So I want to place on record our appreciation for their cooperation, Mr. Speaker, in this regard. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the following papers be laid on the table. 1. The annual report and report of the Director of Audit on the financial statements of the Grenada Food and Nutrition Council for the year ended 31st December 2016. 2. Report of the Director of Audit Grenada on the financial statements of the Grenada National Stadium Authority for the year ended 31st December 2015. 3. Fiscal Responsibility Oversight Committee, FROC, 2017 Annual Report. 4. Report of the Director of Audit Grenada on the financial statements of the T.A. Marisho Community College, TAMCC, for the year ended 31st December 2016. 5. Report of the Director of Audit Grenada on the resources managed by for the period from the 1st January 2017 to 31st December 2017 by the Project Coordination Unit within the Ministry of Finance and Energy for the Caribbean Regional Communications Infrastructure Program, CASIP, and the income and expenditure for accounting period ended 31st December 2017. 6. Government of Grenada Compliance Assessment Report, Supplementary Budget 2018. 7. Minutes of the Standing Committee on Finance held at the Ministry of Works Conference Room on Monday, 16th July 2018. And 8. Supplementary estimates for the period 1st July 2018 to 31st December 2018.
Honorable members, these papers and reports have been laid on the table.
Item number 9, unopposed private business. Item number 10, questions. Item number 11, urgent questions under the provisions of Standing Order 21, notice of questions. Item 12, statements by ministers.
At this time, let me just ask that we use the button to the right, I'm told.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise with great pride, not just to give a ministerial report, but to give a ministerial report for the first time in this esteemed House. What a wonderful House the people have built. And it is the people, Mr. Speaker, it is the people that have elected the government that has made sure that this dream of previous governments since 2004 have come to a reality, and that we are here to conduct the people's business under the view of the people. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to congratulate the people for having faith in us and for allowing us to carry out that duty. But, Mr. Speaker, our task does not end there. In fact, it continues, and I rise to speak on behalf of my ministry, the Ministry of Health, Social Security and International Business, to give an update of recent events since last we met as a group. Mr. Speaker, proudly I can say as of today. The promise that we made a year ago, or actually two promises. One was to create employment for all qualified nurses in Grenada in some form or fashion. We met that commitment by creating part-time employment for those nurses who were yet to be on the establishment or yet to be employed by government. That commitment was met by giving them a part-time employment. And Mr. Speaker, we promised the people and the nurses in particular that once the fiscal space existed, that we would bring them on as full-time. And Mr. Speaker, I can say as of today, those nurses have been brought on as full-time employees within the Ministry of Health, Mr. Speaker. To every solution, there is additional challenges that have to be addressed. And we are at the same time addressing the issue with those nurses coming onto the establishment. We recognize that there is also an issue long overdue to be addressed, which is those nurses who have been on the system in some form or fashion, but have not received the appropriate remuneration based on their years of service. That also is being addressed, and the Ministry of Health, in cooperation with DPA and the Ministry of Finance, have found the ways and means to address that. And I expect by the next time we come to this esteemed House, we will say that that issue has been remedied as well, that the nurses, based on their years of service, will be receiving their appropriate remuneration. I simply ask that they have faith in us that we will meet that commitment as we have met the other commitments in making good on all of our promises. Mr. Speaker, we continue to increase the stock of doctors in the Ministry of Health. However, it is a 2 steps forward, 1 step back process as we bring on newly qualified doctors and additional doctors from Cuba. We also have to deal with the resignation and leaving from the system of doctors for various reasons, personal reasons, as well as doctors going to further their studies arranged through the government or privately. So it is a 2 step forward, 1 step backwards, but we continue to endeavor with the cooperation of the partners that we have, St. George's University, as well as the government and people of Cuba. And also, Mr. Speaker, I can say that today we also have doctors studying, or Grenadians studying to be doctors or to specialize in China as well as in Russia, Mr. Speaker, and other countries. Mr. Speaker, Phase 2 of the hospital. Phase 2 of the hospital continues on schedule. We are holding hard and fast to occupying that facility in November. We are working closely with the Ministry of Works as well as the contractor to make sure that there are no slippages in that timeline, to make sure that we do occupy that building to serve the people better in November. I will continue to give updates, and if there are slippages through acts of God or conditions outside of our control, we will inform. Mr. Speaker, Princess Alice Hospital, near completion for the smarting funded by DFID. There were slippages. That facility should have been delivered on July 17th. The contractor, through various issues, is late on delivery on that, but we are working with Ministry of Works as well and the contractor to make sure that it is delivered in a timely manner to serve the people in St. Andrews and St. Patrick's who use that facility, Mr. Speaker. Princess Royal construction will start on the smarting and making Princess Royal more climate resilient as well. Mr. Speaker, the Guave Polyclinic. Mr. Speaker, on numerous times I have come to this House to say that we are ready and expect a groundbreaking. I come back again to say that there will be a groundbreaking before Carnival. If not, I challenge any soca artist to sing songs about us and this delay. We will have the groundbreaking before Carnival. I have confirmed with the Ministry of Works, there have been delays, but because of the numerous parties involved and the fact that it is international funding, etc., it has taken time to dot all the I's and cross all the T's. Mr. Speaker, NIS and National Health Insurance. The basket of services recommended basket of services that would be provided under national health insurance has been delivered to us. There are variations and decisions we must make as a government and as a people in consultation as to how extensive that basket of services will be. At the same time, there are decisions to be made through consultation with respect to how those baskets of services will be paid for. That is the stage that we are at now, in continued cooperation with the University of the West Indies, Pan American Health Organization, the NIS, our very own NIS, and the stakeholders that make up the NIS, and look forward to comments and participation from our social partners as well on that as we move forward, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in all aspects, as I said the first time I came to this House as Minister of Health, continue to say that we must strive as a ministry, as a government, to ensure that the Ministry of Health becomes more people-centered, focusing on the people that we deal with. And we are making efforts to change, one, the public perception, and perception is truth, the public perception of healthcare in Grenada. And that starts with our people within the ministry, our doctors, our nurses, our service providers, our administration within the Ministry of Health, changing the way they do business, changing the way they do business in the eyes of the people, of displaying to the people a better heart and caring mannerism. So I take on all of the complaints and all of the comments that we have received from the public. Adjustments are continually being made, but it is a never-ending process that we look forward to continuing this journey, listening to the people. It's not just about providing better facilities. It is about providing better service to our people. So, Mr. Speaker, I look forward to coming back to this House and giving regular reports on, one, the facilities that are being improved, but in particular, the way in which the public is interacting and the benefits the public are receiving with respect to healthcare. For instance, Mr. Speaker, in the area of dialysis, there have been significant cries from members of the public for us to treat or deal with the issue of dialysis. Right now, it is being dealt with private providers through government support in some form or fashion. We are well on the way to having that second provider start up operations, as well as having a mobile screening unit to be traveling around the island, and also have identified the need and will identify that qualified person to be a nephrologist here, a resident nephrologist in Grenada, to be able to deal with the increasing challenges with respect to dialysis here in Grenada. We have started the process of peritoneal dialysis being offered at the hospital. It is in its infancy. The first set of patients have been on treatment, and we have been going through the various teething problems to make sure that this process, while treating those patients, that we treat them, one, in a humane manner, but two, as efficiently and effectively as possible. So there are constant upgrades. But as always, with healthcare, there will be constantly the need to do better always. So I look forward to working with you, with my colleagues and the people in making sure that we constantly improve healthcare in Grenada. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Representative for St. George South. Honourable Representative for St. Andrew Northeast and Minister in the Ministry of Youth and Sports.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I rise to update this Honorable House, I feel so honored yet very humbled to be addressing this House in such a state-of-the-art facilities, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my duty here this morning is to give an update of the activities of the Ministry of Youth Development, Sports, Culture, and the Arts. And within this ministry, Mr. Speaker, a lot has been happening. The Ministry of Youth Development, we have seen a series of activities engaging all our young people throughout Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. Mr. Speaker, we have just completed a Vibes In project. This is a project of the Caribbean Development Bank in collaboration with the Ministry of Youth Development. The project focused on climate-smart agriculture, and under the theme, Climate Action Today equals Food for Tomorrow, there were two components of this project. Component one would have seen a music video challenge where the top 3 winners were rewarded with cash prizes. Component two involved the 30 participants who were engaged in a 3-day boot camp at the Kalinago Beach Hotel. And they were learning on how to mitigate the negative impacts of climate change. As a result of the success of this project, Mr. Speaker, 5 of the participants were selected to receive training in agriculture in China. Mr. Speaker, just last week we would have launched Project Reach 3 at Her Majesty's Prison. Again, a project sponsored by the Caribbean Development Bank in collaboration with the Ministry of Youth Development and Ministry of Social Development. This is part of the Aspire program, and Mr. Speaker, what you would see here is a rehabilitation and empowerment of 30 participants who are incarcerated at Her Majesty's Prison. And for the next year, Mr. Speaker, they will be engaged in training in small business, numeracy and literacy skills, life skills, vocational skills, small business, and the performing arts. Mr. Speaker, we have also just concluded a series of Let's Vibes Youth Forum, where we would have engaged many young people across Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique, creating a platform for them to express the issues they are being faced as young people and giving them the opportunity to provide solutions to those issues. As a result of the success of this program, another component, a special component, the Block Vibes, will take place in the 3rd quarter of this year. Mr. Speaker, very importantly, we have in Petite Martinique ongoing is training in furniture making, a project in collaboration with the Ministry of Carriacou and Petite Martinique Affairs and the Petite Martinique Fishermen Cooperative. Here we have 10 of our young persons involved in a 6-month training program. And following that training program, Mr. Speaker, we expect those young men to be producing furniture to supply to our schools and other government buildings. Mr. Speaker, the New Imani program. The New Imani program, are very important under the Ministry of Youth Development, where we continue to engage all of our young people meaningfully with hands-on and on-the-job training. For the past 3 months, Mr. Speaker, I am happy to announce to this Honorable House that 54 of our trainees have received permanent employment. Mr. Speaker, other trainees are engaged in upgrading themselves, attaining CVQ and NVQ passes and training in Level 2 and Level 3 in courses such as commercial food preparation, data operations, housekeeping, nail technology, and garment production. Mr. Speaker, we are also proud to announce that the scholarship component of the program have 112 trainees engaged. This year, 8 of our trainees have completed school, 2 have graduated from the St. George's University in May, and tomorrow, 6 of these trainees will be graduating from the T.A. Marisho Community College. Some of the upcoming activities for the Ministry of Youth Development, we'll see the launch of another Project Fly, that is fostering level-headed youth, a community resilience project. Thus far, Mr. Speaker, we would have seen the project engaged in many communities such as Rose Hill, Victoria, Montu, and Harvey Vale. This component, this Project Fly, will be taking place in communities within St. David and St. John. We will also see, Mr. Speaker, in September, the launch of a very important project, the Empower Project. And this project will cater for approximately 500 young males between the ages 18 and 30. And the project will be for a duration of 1 year, providing training in vocational skills, community programs, and life skills. Mr. Speaker, with relation to the small business aspect, the division, we are rebranding the Grenada Youth Enterprise Initiative, and it will now be referred to as YouthBiz. As part of the rebranding, you would see the establishment of 3 YouthBiz hubs across venues across our Tri-Island state. And these hubs will provide small business services and support to our young persons who are interested in establishing their own business. Mr. Speaker, all of these projects and programs speaks to our commitment to the young people of our country, and we will continue to meaningfully engage them so that they will acquire all the knowledge and skills that are necessary to make a valuable contribution to our nation's development. Mr. Speaker, culture. Carnival 2018, Mr. Speaker, is in full swing. And from all indications, it's going to be a bumper one. Mr. Speaker, we have just seen the completion of the preliminary rounds of Soca and the Groovy Monarch. And already, some of these artists are into the semi-final rounds. We congratulate them and wish them all the best. Mr. Speaker, there is a lot of activities and excitement for Carnival 2018. To this end, I wish to encourage all our patrons to have a clean, safe, and an enjoyable Carnival 2018. In the Ministry of Sports, Mr. Speaker, the Windward Island Volcanoes team will be moving their headquarters and the team to Grenada. Thus far, Mr. Speaker, the management, coaches, and some of the players, they are already here. And they will be engaged in a training camp between now and September. Mr. Speaker, this is very good for us as a people, because what you will see, our young cricketers now will have the opportunity to train and play alongside more experienced players. And with the movement of the families into our country, it will also boost our economic activities. Mr. Speaker, we have our sportsmen and women who continue to make us proud. We have just concluded the Windward Island Under-19 cricket tournament right here in Grenada, where our young cricketers emerged champions. We congratulate them, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, our swimmers continue to propel the sport to higher levels, with sterling performances at the recently held Central American and Caribbean Swimming Federation Swim Championship held in Aruba. Our team won 4 silver and 2 bronze medals. Mr. Speaker, special congratulations. Mr. Speaker, 2 more minutes, please. Could you allow me 2 more minutes, please?
All right, Honorable Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For this time, yes.
Okay. Mr. Speaker, we must give special congratulations to Mr. Delroy Felix, the first Grenadian swimmer to qualify for Youth Olympic Games to be held in Argentina 2018. Our athletes, Kirani James, Bralon Taplin, and Amanda Crawford continue to shine on the international stage. Mr. Speaker, I say kudos to all of our sportsmen and women, and I encourage them to continue making us proud. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Representative for St. Andrew North East. Honourable Representative for St. Mark.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is indeed an honor and a pleasure to be here to provide information on the ministry for which I have responsibility at this time, which is the Ministry of Tourism and Civil Aviation. But it is indeed a pleasure to be here in this new House of the Parliament. Mr. Speaker, as you gave the anecdote of the visitor to the country who asked what this building is about, I recall attending a meeting in Canada, and there was one day that was set aside for a tour, and we toured the Parliament building in Canada. That was in Montreal, I think, in Ottawa. And Parliament was in session. And it was part of a tour for a few hours. And we were allowed to sit and to observe the proceedings of the Parliament. And I remember getting the surprise of my life because we were in a big group, and then I heard my name mentioned as a visiting parliamentarian, and I was asked to stand. I got a little surprised, but of course, when you're in this business this long, you recover quickly, and so I was able to stand and to bow to the people, and there was a little bit of an applause for that. And, you know, it set me thinking, as you mentioned the tourists, that, and I know we've been having discussions on it, that we should look at this building as part of a tour for our tourists. And I get the feeling that that is the way you are trending, and I hope that Parliament, you and the staff, you and the President of the Senate and staff can consider this part, because this area is a very historic area for us, and I'm sure with the history that we're working on and the beauty of this location, that we can do a very exciting tour for our visitors. Mr. Speaker, in providing other information for this Honorable House, I want to move to our cruise ship consultancy that we're doing. It is very obvious that we need to improve on our attractions, we need to improve on the quality of our service, and we need to improve on the experiences that people get when they come. No longer are people satisfied with just looking at something, but they want to experience, be part of the lives of the people for the few minutes or the few hours that they're going to be in our country. So we have embarked on a cruise ship consultancy, which has started for some time, but is looking at issues like the traffic in the town of St. George, which we know is a very troubling and vexing issue at times, but when the cruise ships do come in, it complicates that. So we are working with the key stakeholders like the police and the Ministry of Works. As a matter of fact, we're depending on them to guide us as to how we can maneuver to improve on the traffic and still have our locals save time in town, but have our visitors go out on their tours in adequate time and come back on the tours, because some of the tour operators, they have complained that especially in returning, where you want to get to the cruise ship in appropriate time, sometimes between the National Stadium or the Queen's Park and the cruise ship, where the cruise ships are docked, it can take you about a half an hour or more. And it does create some moments of anxiety for our visitors, as well as, of course, our tour operators. One of the other things that we're looking at is the Market Square improvement, to look at how we can improve the operations there, We're not seeking to change the operations. Most of what happens at this time will happen, but we want to make it more orderly. We want to have our craft very visible. We want to provide information for our tourists on the history of our market and so on, because that market, again, has a very rich history, which we as a nation have not taught our people, but which we also have not exploited for the benefits of tourism, because while our visitors like to ride around and go on Grenada Beach, many of them, most of them I would say, are interested in the history and the heritage of our country. So we are working on that, and as we speak, there is ongoing training for 50 vendors, vegetable and craft vendors, but mostly craft vendors, and this is aimed at improving the quality of the service of what we provide, and it is just the beginning, because it is a continuous effort to improve on the quality of what we offer to our visitors. And I want to commend all those who are involved in this exercise. And I want to state here, Mr. Speaker, through you, that this is the first time I've seen the private sector get so involved in assisting in the decision making, in assisting in the execution of what we decide, but also several of them have put their monies where their mouth is. So I'm very happy to state that in this honorable House. Mr. Speaker, I want to take a moment to speak to the visitor statistics from January to May of this year in comparison to the same period in 2017. And Grenada is really looking good. We have managed to market Grenada more. We have managed to get more people knowledgeable about Grenada, but also wanting to come, because we have sent some images out there that are second to none and better than so many, that many tourists are coming. And having been part of Caribbean Week in New York just a month or two ago, Grenada received a lot of kudos, a lot of commendations. Grenada received awards for what we're doing, and I want to say thanks to Team Grenada, all of us, from those who are directly involved in the industry to those our citizens, because one of the things that we are commended for always is the love and the respect, the friendliness of our people. So I pray that the good mornings and the good evenings that perhaps we take for granted continue, because it is a refreshing breeze for visitors to our shores. But Mr. Speaker, to go specifically to our numbers, I'll just give the grand total from January to May in the interest of time, but I also want to beg your indulgence, Mr. Speaker, because I'm sure my colleague parliamentarians would want to get some more details, so I've got a package here that can be distributed at your convenience so that our members can see, because ignorance is not bliss. What happens in our country is important to all of us. So just to give the grand total in cruise from January to May, in 2017, we had 173,000+ people coming in at that period. For this year, we have had 219,000. Did I say the right figure? 173,874. And for 2018, 219,712 to May, Mr. Speaker, an increase of 26.36%, 26.36% in cruise. In yachting, 2017, 10,801. And that is up till May, so these numbers are expected to more than double by the end of the year. In 2018, we have seen 13,407, an increase of 24%, Mr. Speaker. I am very proud of this because in the beginning, sometime in 2017, yachting was an issue that concerned us because our numbers were not looking good. But this time around, we are looking good. There is a lot of interest in yachts coming to Grenada for racing and a number of other things, and we're doing well. Kudos to Team Grenada again. And in our stayover passengers, 2017 at this time and up to May, we had 60,194, and 2018 for the similar period, we've had an increase of 6,194. So we've seen 730 passengers, an increase of 10.86%. We are extremely happy for that. Mr. Speaker, we have marketed, but we have also negotiated with flights, because you cannot encourage people to come to Grenada and not provide the wherewithal for them to get to our country. And I want to start off with Liat, because our numbers in Caribbean visitors have increased tremendously this first part of 2018 and also the latter part of 2017. And that is due in part to the negotiations and discussions, very amicable, with Liat. I know at one time they were very unhappy with me and the member for St. George Northwest. As a matter of fact, after we made some statements, they pulled flights, very unceremoniously, very unprofessionally from us. But I must say, first of all, two things happened. One is that they felt the negative impact of that action, because the traffic of people into and out of Grenada is tremendous compared to some of our other islands, and our growth compared to other islands have shown that without a doubt. So they realized the error of their mistakes, but also we knew that we needed them, and so both sides ate humble pie, and we sat at the table and negotiated. And I want to compliment the Airlift Committee for the intervention, because now, I don't know how many have traveled in recent times, Liat is more on time than anything else. We have more flights, the flights between Barbados and Grenada, and we know that is a critical leg, a journey for many of our Grenadians for visa purposes and other reasons, and for connecting flights, because Barbados, does have more flights than us. It has increased by 19%, and we're holding discussions now, and looks very favorable that we will be getting more flights between Barbados and Grenada, but to other parts of the island as other parts of the Caribbean as well, and we look forward to that. Whether it's just to stop off in Barbados or whether it's to continue onward, we welcome that move. Mr. Speaker, I will beg your indulgence for 2 more minutes.
Granted this time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, the data on the number of flights, I would not go into it, but I just want to say that now we have moved to year-round flights with Air Canada in this year, and thanks to the Minister for Finance and his team, who have found some money so that we can sweeten them out a little bit to bring them into our countries. And we know there was concern about flights. Our own locals, our own people in the diaspora, as well as visitors, complained. And as we speak, we are continuing negotiations, because this is not enough. People love Grenada and want to come to our shores. Also, we have moved from 5 flights with JetBlue to weekly flights, 7 days a week, and we are happy for that, Mr. Speaker. American Airlines, they have announced a second flight to Grenada. No, it's not daily yet, but we're hoping to get that. So we've had when I heard recently that American had announced one to Barbados, and I looked at our stats when we went to New York, and our increases were much more significant than Barbados. I wondered what was happening, but they had a plan for us. And so they will be coming, and they're looking at increasing their flights, but certainly our visitors and our Grenadians will have more options, and certainly one of the bigger contributor, perhaps the biggest contributor to airlift with American, St. George's University. We must not forget them. They will have more facilities to come to our shores. So, Mr. Speaker, just to move from the flights, I just want to speak to our room stock and to commend all in Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique who are making efforts to increase their numbers of rooms, but also the quality, moving from maybe a 2-star, 3-star to a 5-star, and we're moving high end. So while we are still have accommodation for the lower end and low income people, but we're moving high end, and this is well received internationally. So we speak to Silver Sands, which is working aggressively to open in November, and also Kimpton Kawana Bay Resort, which was originally flamboyant. They're moving aggressively, but also the hotels, the smaller hotels that have been increasing in their room stock that they don't tell us a lot about, and we don't talk a lot about it, but that is another information that I would have to provide to this honorable house. But I want to compliment all of those who have made Grenada, pure Grenada, the Isle of Spice, more recognized, more seen, and a more desired destination. Many have played their roles, and too numerous to mention at this time. Some of them are within this very honorable house. But my commendations and my thanks to all of them. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I am very heartened at the relationship that has been established and strengthened between the hotel sector and agriculture. Our indigenous hotels, our traditional hotels have worked very closely with our farmers, and they're happy for that. We are happy, and since the numbers are growing, the purchases will grow. But I am very heartened to see what Silver Sands is doing with the farmers. They go out there, they introduce new crops. So, whereas as a child I didn't know what a zucchini was, the first time I saw it I thought it was a kind of cucumber. But now zucchini is being grown here, and primarily for the hotel sector, but all of us will know what a zucchini is and would want to try it too. So they've brought in new crops that we didn't do much with before. They have identified spices that we do not do much with that are priceless in the culinary industry. So the future looks good for the marriage between tourism and agriculture. And we are going to continue the work to ensure that the dollar stays in Grenada as much as possible, the tourism dollar. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Representative for St. Mark and Minister for Tourism and Civil Aviation. Honourable Representative for St. Andrew Southwest.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I too share the excitement with everyone here. My team is here, and several other persons from different constituencies are here as we enjoy the comfort of our new home. This is indeed a state-of-the-art. You see how I'm dressed? I'm going way back to Kurt Strawn. You see how I'm dressed? Mr. Speaker, it's a pleasure to be here this morning. Mr. Speaker, no, you're laughing. Mr. Speaker, it speaks about a government that is serious about development. Mr. Speaker, and I'll give you a little joke. On mornings when I'm coming down in my vehicle, my driver would always put the radio on a particular station. And I keep saying to him, why are you putting the radio on this station all the time? He said, because I'm listening to what is taking place and what the station is talking about. Well, he knows what he's talking about. So I said to him, but Mr. Speaker, I myself listened a couple times, and every time I listen, that particular station is saying that this government is not doing anything. Nothing is happening in the country. Nothing is happening. The government is not doing. But Mr. Speaker, I'm sure that they cannot hide from this building. This building where it's perched, this white, I would say a well-dignified building, perched on the top of this hill and could be seen from all angles. Nobody can hide from that piece of development. Mr. Speaker, since the last sitting of Parliament, the Ministry of Agriculture, Lands was preoccupied with the transition of some departments and programs, which formed part of the agriculture portfolio for the most part over the last 5 years. This brings to the fore its own dynamics, Mr. Speaker. However, Mr. Speaker, the ministry remains committed to the process, recognizing the need for shared services as we occupy some common space. We now have we have to share spaces with another ministry. Mr. Speaker, having asserted the current reality of the ministry, I am pleased to share with this Honourable House information related to the ministry's achievement of the agriculture sector during the last quarter. Mr. Speaker, the ministry is cognizant of the need to develop a result-oriented approach with emphasis on the agri-food sector, and most importantly, in the implementation of government policies. In this regard, Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to report that we have agreed on and completed some strategic priorities and actions for the next few months, thus influencing the strategic direction of the aforementioned period. Mr. Speaker, during the period under review, some 253 farmers and officers received training in a number of areas: pest and disease management, soil and water management, food safety, composting using sargassum, and soursop value chain. Mr. Speaker, I'm particularly pleased with the ministry's outgoing efforts towards sensitizing our farmers to accept the sargassum as a resource through composting. And those of you who have looked at GBN would have seen a demonstration of that. And we continue to replicate it in all of the different constituencies so that farmers would get a feel and could get an understanding of the use of the sargassum seaweed. And Mr. Speaker, I'm telling you, I've never seen seaweed in my whole life. If you take a ride up to St. Andrews, Marquis and Subies, the entire seafront is filled with that. So our farmers have to take it seriously. Our farmers have to start using the sargassum seaweed, as part of for their farms and so forth. Mr. Speaker, I'm sure that this development will bring some comfort to the entire public as we continue to witness more of this sargassum visiting our shores. Mr. Speaker, the Farm Labor Program, in collaboration with the Ministry of Infrastructure, will commence in the coming weeks. A minimum of 105 farmers will benefit from the program, with the targeted subsectors being cocoa, nutmeg, soursop, avocados, and spices. The program will also focus on improving access to a number of farm roads. So I'm sure the farmers will be happy that some of the farm roads that have been clogged up, we hope to clear with this program. Mr. Speaker, I wish to also inform this Honorable House that the planned distribution program will be launched on Thursday, the 19th July, 2018. A total of 38,356 plants are available for distribution, with approximately 8 major plant types. So those of you who are interested in plants, the opportunity, the launching of the program as usual every year. This year it would be on Thursday, the 19th, at the Maribor propagating station. No, it's not free. It's not free, Somebody just mentioned if it's free. But there's a reduction. There's a reduction. It's been, subsidized a bit. Mr. Speaker, as we commence the implementation of the OECS Agriculture Competitiveness Project, you may have heard me speak about this project here over and over. Agricom project, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, 5 persons representing the agriculture sector visited Honduras last month as part of their study tour to experience the best practices documented on a similar project implemented there. And they said it was quite an experience, Mr. Speaker. The whole idea of working as a community, working together, is what caught their attention. The clusters that they developed, and that kind of thing. In Grenada, I don't know, we're not so very good at clustering, but I think it's happening, it's unfolding, and we hope to push on that to ensure that we get these programs going and these projects, and everybody can benefit, farmers can benefit from it. You may have heard me speak about this project. It's finally here, and Mr. Speaker, we will be officially launching this project on Thursday, the 26th, at the Spice Basket. Mr. Speaker, the Veterinary and Livestock Division continues to strengthen its efforts and improve the health of all animals in Grenada through effective examination and vaccination. Mr. Speaker, the division conducted its first outreach veterinary clinic program in the town of Victoria in May of 2018. A number of animals were examined and vaccinated. Mr. Speaker, the Chinese technical team is here, and we have quite a team this time. They are here, so they will begin work soon with the farmers, where they can show them new techniques and new ideas so they can develop their farming techniques. Mr. Speaker, the ministry continues to engage in management of CANCO towards forging greater partnerships. During the month of June, there were fruitful discussions on the possibility of two initiatives: a joint effort in the control of the mongoose population. You know, mongoose like to go in the cane fields, that's where they hide. Having recognized that the cane fields form part of a natural habitat for mongoose, and the utilization of the present cane stock, or in the future, cane tops, in the creation of soilage and animal feed. So we're doing some smart agriculture here, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, CANCO is doing very well. And those of you who drive through the country, you can see that development. You can see how they have cleared some areas and they are working assiduously to get this project on foot. What is happening now, Mr. Speaker, they're looking at the area where the distillery will be constructed, and they're looking at widening the road to get to the distillery. So all of that is taken. The preparatory work is being done now so that this thing would unfold smoothly in January of next year. Mr. Speaker, there are a number of projects and initiatives geared at strengthening the agriculture sector, one of which is the Sustainable Agriculture Enterprise Project, SAIP. And that project, Mr. Speaker, is in the process of organizing so that implementation will start. They will be implementing the Climate Smart Agriculture Project. Implementation of the poultry policy, Mr. Speaker, we are getting there. We have a lot of discussions lately, and we are moving in the direction to unfold the recommendations, Mr. Speaker. Support for the artificial insemination program and apiculture development, Mr. Speaker. We are now looking at opening the office in Grenville so that they can start working with the beekeepers and so to make sure that they know what exists on the island, put the register together, and start having meetings and bringing in persons with the expertise to speak with these beekeepers and so that they can start developing the industry further, because we have quite a lot of small beekeepers on the island, and they are struggling to move forward with the projects. Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to reveal that heavy emphasis have been placed on streamlining the functions of the ministry. We are doing a lot of work now, Mr. Speaker, because we have also a lot of our persons have moved on, they are moving out, and we have to reorganize and restructure. Mr. Speaker, I'm almost there, so could you please give me 2 minutes, please? Thank you.
Granted.
Yeah. Our immediate focus is on strengthening extension services, Mr. Speaker. That has been a big problem and continues to be a problem. Mr. Speaker, in the coming weeks, the ministry will be rolling out its plans that will realize a refined structure in the delivery of extension services. I am confident that this new trust will be welcomed by our farmers and will create a platform to offer greater support to them. Mr. Speaker, I thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister for Agriculture and Parliamentary Representative for Sinanju Southwest. Honorable Representative for St. David.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to be in this new environment. You never know, Mr. Speaker, where the future will take you. I recall as a student, postgraduate student in Scotland, and Commonwealth Day, they invited the university to select some Commonwealth students to sit in the Scottish Parliament. So I was selected as one of the students from the university, and the design was very similar. We were looking down at the MPs, never knowing that one day I'll be here, looking up. You see? So, life of a strange way, Mr. Speaker. But you see, I believe in divine purpose. You see? Whatever God designed for you, that is what will be. So I'm pleased, Mr. Speaker, to be here. And I'm pleased that I'll be part of, when the history is written, as part of the 15 members who sat in the first sitting in this new environment. And it's a building really that I've heard so much glowing terms in and outside of Grenada. This is on the net and all over YouTube because so many people know about it. It's well known, you know, Mr. Speaker. But anyway, today, I know you wouldn't give me back the time that I spent in the introduction. So I'll have to go, so I'll go straight to my ministerial statement. And Mr. Speaker, today I'm very pleased to report that at the last quoted meeting, the Council for Trade and Economic Development, that the request from the LDCs for an extension of Article 164 products were granted, and that Grenada played a lead role. In fact, Grenada is the one that made the presentation on behalf of the LDCs. I will explain what that means for us. Under the revised treaty, we agree for free trade among all CARICOM member states. However, this Article 164 says that if, as a result of participating in the single market arrangement, any country is made disadvantaged or have difficulties in participating, can seek to impose duty on a list of goods, because you know it's a free trade. You're not supposed to impose duty on any CARICOM goods. But as LDCs, you can go make a case, put forward a case, to have certain products protected by imposing duty. So in Grenada's case, we produce aerated beverage, water, beer, malt, and stout. So we had interest in other LDCs countries we produce other products that if the market is open, it will lead to the destruction of the company. Trinidad has excess capacity in the production of flour. They can send it to Grenada cheap. If you remove that to enter zero at zero duty, it will be very difficult for the local company to compete on the open market with this low-cost production. Okay, you know, electricity rate is 7 times cheaper in Trinidad than it is in Grenada. So the input costs alone is starting out as an advantage. And that is why this government has always insisted that we need to reduce the cost of electricity in order to increase production. That's a serious constraint, you know, Mr. Speaker. Sometimes we treat that matter so lightly. But this is keeping back our own development. People coming to produce in Grenada are staying away because of high electricity costs, you know. Because it's a major input in the production of any good. So if your input cost is high, well, the cost of your product and the output going to be extremely high. So they wouldn't come and settle here and see production. And that is why we need to address this matter, because it affects our economic development. It's a serious matter, Mr. Speaker. And that's why we have to go and seek the protection we are granted for 10 years, the extension, and for 2 products, curry powder and pasta, for 5 years, with a review at the end of the 5-year period. So that was a major success for us at the last Council for Trade and Economic Development meeting, Mr. Speaker, which I felt I have to update this Honorable House on. The second issue, Mr. Speaker, I want to focus on is the implementation of the National Export Strategy. We have had help from the Commonwealth to develop this National Export Strategy. We had one in the past that was done, and we review it, and then come up with an updated export strategy with an implementation plan. Because, you know, you could have all this nice strategic paper, and 5 years pass and nothing achieved, you know. This time, we have an implementation plan. How are we going to implement the things in the export strategy? And one of the areas, Mr. Speaker, that we give heavy emphasis, which is a new area to many people, is trade in services. A lot of people don't yet even the people who export services are not aware. And so trade in services is one of the areas that we will be focusing on. So not only goods, you could export goods, physical goods, but non-tangible export. So you have your expertise, you sit here, you're a medical doctor, and someone consults with you over the internet and you provide your service. And there are different ways of trading goods in services. And there's a whole agreement now, called the General Agreement on Trading Services under the WTO, GATS. Before the first agreement deal with GATT, the General Agreements on Tariffs and Trade, that with goods, but a whole agreement called the General Agreement on Trading Services, and how you trade services, the different modes, and how we can improve your economy. And a lot of emphasis is being placed on that area. And next week, Monday and Tuesday, right in Grenada, there will be a services workshop for a local service provider to expose them to this agreement and to let them know how they can export their services. This will be conducted by the officials from the CARICOM Secretariat and other expertise that will be coming down. And there are a lot of interest. You've sent out the notice to the various service providers, and we have had very good responses. In Grenada, we have the Coalition of Service Providers, and they are working closely with the Ministry of Trade in ensuring that we have this workshop and the training of service providers. And so, Mr. Speaker, we have a plan in place for the next 5 years in implementing this national export strategy for both goods and services, because we need to increase our export. If you look at the balance of trade figures, Mr. Speaker, we import almost everything. We import almost everything, and we have to pay for it in US currency. So we are depleting our foreign exchange, because when we import, we have to pay. So if you could increase our export, we will receive foreign exchange. When you export, the more you export, the more foreign exchange you will receive, and we could see a balance it out. Of course, we will always, as a net importing country, net food importing country, we will always have this problem of more input than we export. But every time we talk about the importation, you know what he said to me, Mr. Speaker? He said, well, you importing too much vehicles in Grenada? Mr. Speaker, over the last 5 years, there'll be a rapid, exponential increase in vehicles, over the last 5 years. Households have more than one vehicle now, three, Minister said 3. Yes, because when the economy is growing, we have people working, they have more disposable income, their standard of living will increase. You can afford to buy these vehicles now. And so I get on almost a daily basis, I would say now, to ban the importation of vehicles because we don't have roads to do it. I say, no, we have to expand the roads. We not ban the vehicle. Because, you see, for someone who don't have a vehicle, if you ever mention about banning vehicle, Mr. Speaker, they have voted for you. Because they say, first thing they say, Mr. Speaker, because you have yours, you want to ban it now. So that is not the way. We have a lot of options, and as a government that looks at the most optimal use of our resources, I'm sure we come up with the best solution. We'll have to look at the traffic congestion and how we could deal with the traffic situation in the south in particular. So I'm happy we hear, Mr. Speaker, going down from the Ministry of Finance to the Trade Center. It should take me almost an hour when you have it down there. Now I'm coming in the opposite direction. It's easy to get here. And that's one of the advantages of having the parliament within here as well. You're not going into and fight over the traffic in south. Sometimes I used to go, take the driver, I used to take me a road on top, go through Woodlands, come out through Granada Valley to come to the Trade Center. Because if we take the road going down, then we're not reaching it now. So it's nice, very convenient here, good parking and all these advantages that goes with it. But it is a good sign, Mr. Speaker, that when the economy is doing well, people can benefit. Because there's no point in standing up here and talk about the growth of 5% in the economy and how well we're doing and so on, and people are not feeling it, not benefiting. People want to know that they will benefit from the growth that is taking place. And for the projects that have been announced recently, I know that people will start benefiting, additional people, that is, will start benefiting more from it. So, Mr. Speaker, the cooperative department emphasis is placed on the existing cooperative, helping them to grow, and also in the establishment of new cooperatives. Since the separation between the financial cooperatives, as the credit unions, and the non-financial, like furniture making, fishing, and so on, the non-financial cooperative has struggled. They are all struggling, and therefore we are looking at a mechanism of helping them, to form new ones and to strengthen the existing ones, because that's one way of creating employment, that business cooperatives getting involved in business. Yeah. So, Mr. Speaker, can I get 5 minutes?
Let's keep it at 2.
2? Okay. All right. So, yeah, Mr. Speaker, I will wrap up with on the cooperative side. Now, you have a lot of young people that are trained. You heard from the Minister of Youth, the CVQs, and we must train these people to start their own business. Most, when you finish training, you're looking for a government job. Well, if you train them, to start their own businesses, that is what we want to see. And that is where the cooperative can help. If 10 of you come together, you form a cooperative, you get funding, you have your own business going, and start working and providing your own jobs and your own income and managing your own affairs. That is the direction that we seek and the role we see for cooperative in this new era, Mr. Speaker. So, yes, so Mr. Speaker, at the next session, I will give the further update on the other areas, but I want to thank you very much for the time given.
Thank you, Honorable Representative for St. David and Minister for Cooperative Trade. And Honorable Representative for St. Andrews Southeast.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise. I'm not sure if I got this right. I think so. Right. I rise this morning to give an update as to what is happening at the Ministry of Education, particularly since the sitting before the last. And my colleague, if our colleagues would bear with us, will come right after me so that she can speak specifically on the initiatives as it relates to tertiary education and skills training. Mr. Speaker, the sitting before the last, we did indicate how much we prioritize engagement of our stakeholders and how much we value this as we go forward, recognizing that in the absence of that or lack of that, we would not get very far. And we recognize too that our stakeholders were saying the same thing, that they think there is need for more engagement, more consultation, more involvement of stakeholders in what is happening in education. So, Mr. Speaker, this morning I'm happy to report that we've concluded our first round of consultation and engagement. And thus far we've been able to meet with parents, teachers, principals, and students in Carriacou and Petit Martinique. We've also been able to meet with principals of primary, secondary, and preschools in Grenada, the Principals Association. Of course, we also did specific consultation with key officials within the ministry and the staff in general, the denominational board, Grenada Union of Teachers, TAMCC Council, representative from SGU, the head and the management of UE Open Campus Grenada, management of NULO, the Grenada National Training Agency, National Accreditation Board, National Scholarship Committee, and the list goes on. Mr. Speaker, what I want to point out of this consultation, we would be sharing with the general public the general things that came out of that. But the key thing I want to point out is the willingness and the commitment for support that we've received from stakeholders. Quite obviously, there are a lot of perception out there, and my colleague would have said earlier, perception is reality. And at the ministry, we've made a commitment that we are going to work on changing some of the perception that is out there as it relates to education and the Ministry of Education in particular. Mr. Speaker, I also want to say that the first day of the new school year, I would make on behalf of the Ministry of Education a national statement as it relates to our commitment as a ministry, as it relates to the new school year and education in general. I want to use this opportunity too, Mr. Speaker, to, in no particular order of importance or relevance, to first mention that we are on target as it relates to purchase of new school books for the new school year. Amidst all of what is said publicly, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that this government is still very committed to this program. We have, since assuming office in 2013, would have continued this program, and every single year would have purchased books towards this program. Just to make a comparison, in the last year, the ministry would have spent some $400,000 on the school books program, and Mr. Speaker, this year over $2 million on this program. We anticipate that the books will be here by the end of this month, and the distribution process would start immediately. But Mr. Speaker, I want to make a very critical point, and I keep saying this to parents, even at my constituency level. The issue is not just about government purchasing books. There's a responsibility that the schools have, there's a responsibility that parents have, there's a responsibility that students have. In other words, a responsibility to care for what is provided. These books are not intended to last one school year. It is a revolving program where the books from the previous year passes on to students in the next year. Now, if we continue to operate in an environment where we feel that the books are free, so we don't have a responsibility to care for them, then we are going to reach that point where government would not be able to continue to sustain this program. I'm appealing, Mr. Speaker, through you to all of us, and I always use the example. My first son, who is in Form 2, my last son, who is going to Form 3, is using books from his brother, who is going to Form 3. And that is after, Mr. Speaker, my second son would have used it and his cousin would have used it. And those are the same books, on the book list. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm appealing to all concerned. Remember, this is our money. It is not just cabinet members making a decision to spend. Every Grenadian would have contributed in one way or the other to this program, and I'm reminding us, let us take it seriously. Mr. Speaker, I want to mention here that there is a vacant position, not that is the only one, but a critical one, that of the Chief Education Officer within the ministry, just to give the assurance to the public that we have opened or started the process for recruitment of that person, and we are doing so by advertising the post, inviting persons locally and otherwise to apply, and we are seeking to have the best candidate. Just to add that we would have lost the previous CEO, the Minister for Agriculture now have the benefits of his service as he is now the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture. Mr. Speaker, the rehabilitation and construction of schools, quite obviously, that is a major issue as well, a major concern. And just to say that as a government, we continue to work towards ensuring that the teaching and learning environment in our schools is one that is not that we can commit to having everybody comfortable at the same time, but we are doing our best. So just to give an update as it relates to the GIP program, the GIP project, and that is a project where we have received funding or commitment for funding through the Caribbean Development Bank. And just to say that the schools for repair under that project, PBC, Grenada Christian Academy, Bishop's College, Grenada 7-Day Comprehensive, SJC Grenville and St. Joseph's Convent, St. George's, and J.W. Fletcher. Those schools, there has been significant delays on this project. I want to say that up front. But also to say that we have received commitment. As a matter of fact, I want to single out and to say Dr. Martin Batiste, who is a Grenadian, working at CDB, has been specifically assigned to Grenada. He was here in April. He's currently here in Grenada again. And the whole objective is to fast track this project to ensure that boots are on the ground as it relates to these projects. In addition to those that I mentioned for repair, Mr. Speaker, I also want to say that also includes for brand new schools, St. Andrew's Anglican Primary School, St. David's Catholic Secondary, and Grenada Christian Academy. Mr. Speaker, based on the new projection in terms of timelines, while we are very fearful about making another commitment, we are aggressively working towards having boots on the ground the first quarter of 2019. And I know that sounds a little bit away, but just to say, and I'm speaking about the new schools now, Mr. Speaker, all of the processes, particularly those that we cannot get away from, so the approvals for certain things, we are moving aggressively with CDB, and they are extremely supportive. We are committing that we have not forgotten those schools. And some persons might be asking, what about the other schools? Of course, Mr. Speaker, budgetary-wise, we cannot commit that we can repair every school at the same time. So what we've done to be as fair as we can, we would have engaged the persons from Ministry of Works to visit all of those schools where there is need for repair and to rank those schools 1 to 5. Mr. Speaker, I want to say this, we are not able during this holiday season to address all the 1s to 5, but I want to give the assurance that we are dealing with the worst cases from 5 come down, and to let the general public know, particularly our stakeholders in education, we are committing to do the best that we can do. Mr. Speaker, I want to also use this opportunity to congratulate all the students who are moving on to new schools because they've successfully passed the CPA exam. Just to update us that we would have had 1,808 students assigned to secondary school and 198 students retained. That we are not extremely happy about those retained. But Mr. Speaker, we are currently reviewing the details of the report, and whatever has to be done in the new school year to address some of those issues, we are going to do so. There has been a slight decline in the performance in math from 57, to 54% in terms of the pass rate. There has been a slight increase, though, in science and English, and we are going to continue to build on those. Mr. Speaker, just to add that 89.2% of the students who sat the exam would have attained over 50% pass. Mr. Speaker, I just want to encourage those persons who have received this opportunity to make the best of it. At the same time, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank our parents. I would have appealed in a different place to our parents to cooperate and to understand the difficulties that we have had with the number of requests that, Mr. Speaker, I beg for an additional, whatever you choose.
2 minutes.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Speaker. So I just want to move on to say, Mr. Speaker, I know we're anticipating CXC results. Just to say, Grenada on the 10th of August would be hosting the release of the results of CXC, and we are very happy to do that hosting. Just to say also that during the August vacation, over 1,000 teachers are being trained, and we view this as extremely important. You would have to speak to the speaker about that. And also the emphasis on math, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that CDB has specially funded a special training for teachers in the area of math, which is one of our biggest concerns. And not just the training during the vacation, but that is a project where these teachers would be assessed, will be supported in the new school year. I want to also use the opportunity, and I'm reminded by the note, Mr. Speaker, that I should publicly congratulate our young Giovanni DeGans, who has represented us so well, and we are so proud of him. A GBSS student, placing second, Mr. Speaker, at the International Brain Bee. And you know, it's one thing to say you place second, and it's another thing to say you place second by 1 point. And I'm sure that must be having him, struggling in his mind to accept second place in that regard. But I just want to commend him, his mother, who seems to be his biggest fan, and all of those who have supported. Mr. Speaker, I want to also use this opportunity to make a very strong statement as it relates to private institutions. The Act says very clearly, the Education Act, that to set up a learning institution privately, you must have a permit from the Minister of Education. I've received a request to sign a permit, Mr. Speaker, and I want to use the opportunity to say publicly that the government of Grenada is uncomfortable with any person who chooses to set up a learning institution and then seeks a permit to operate. Mr. Speaker, the Act is extremely clear. You seek the permit first, it's inspected, and then you operate. So this is and I'll try to be final, Mr. Speaker. This cabinet, and I'm extremely proud of this, the revised school policy on drugs. We have just passed this at the cabinet level, and I want to use, as I say this, the opportunity to appeal to parents, to appeal to the general public. We have too many students who are engaged in the use of alcohol. Mr. Speaker, it means that some irresponsible adult is supplying. Mr. Speaker, I appeal to us. I'm also going to make another very strong statement because we have to set the example. So you cannot have a school function where alcohol is sold. We have to set the example. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, as I said before, we will be making some public statements in the new school year as to how we go forward. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Representative for the Danville Southeast and Minister for Education. Honourable Representative for St. Patrick East.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker and all members of this Honourable House. It's indeed a great pleasure to be back here again. And I would just like to continue from where my colleague left off regarding education. And we are very proud of what Giovanni de Gans has done for the state of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. Mr. Speaker, tertiary education and skills development is really critical to the development of our people and the future of our country, our tri-island state of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. Mr. Speaker, I want to say today that I believe that it is really a sure way to provide unemployed persons in this little island of ours with the skills that it really needs, or that they really need, to access the jobs that are out there, and also to develop the entrepreneurial skills that they need to create their own employment and so become independent people in our nation. Mr. Speaker, sir, when we are investing in our own human resource, we have to ensure that we do it in a right manner. We have to ensure that our investment remains the utmost change agent there is to unlock the potential of our own people and so allow them to become the best that they can be. And so, Mr. Speaker, it's really a great honor to report to this Honorable House that in the last 100 days, our ministry was able to promote skills development by collaborating with the New Life organization. We have formed a partnership with NULO to give a second chance to persons throughout our tri-island state, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I remember my father shedding tears when his first daughter, earned her bachelor's degree. And he did the same thing when the second one did it. And I, as a young person growing up, wondered, why would such a man, who was a real, headstrong black man, in my view, shed tears, you know. One day I asked him, and if you know my dad, it's not an easy question to ask, Daddy, why did you cry last year when that happened? He told me he never had an opportunity to go get his own degree because his mother fell ill. And he, as the last child in the house, the only child at the time, had to put off his trip to London and stay to take care of his mother. But the good thing that came out of it is that he met my mother during that time. So that was okay. But that was really good so that I could be here today. But Mr. Speaker, the whole message that I'm trying to pass on is that second chance is really important to adults. At that point in time, my father had no way of getting his degree. He wanted to be a lawyer. So he could come in this house and argue, you know, for the sake of the people. That was his goal in life. He never got to achieve that. And he never got to be here in this honorable house like I am now, because I think that was the reason. It hampered him some way or another. It didn't allow him the confidence that he needed to proceed. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that this government, elected by the people of Grenada, is all about giving people a second chance. And so I want to announce that a total of 230 adults will have that second chance. And Mr. Speaker, I want to say again that at New Low's graduation last week, I saw parents shed similar tears. I didn't get to ask them why, but I'm sure because they too didn't have an opportunity that their child now has. And so, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that our government will be embarking on this project with the New Life organization so that these people can have an opportunity to gain CVQs up to level 2 and up to level 3. And those would be equal to CXC's associate degrees, Mr. Speaker. I am very proud to make that announcement here today. They will have an opportunity to qualify for jobs in the area of hospitality arts, construction, crop production and poultry rearing, fashion design, geriatric care, electrical installation, plumbing, and agro-processing. They will also have an opportunity to improve on their literacy and numeracy skills, their computer ICT skills, as well as they will have an opportunity to go out there to train in different areas so that they can either access jobs there, be qualified for any available positions, or they can go out there into the community and develop their own business and employ themselves. As a result, Mr. Speaker, we will be producing quality and competent workforce that is really essential for a productive economy. It will be conducted in the evenings. It will be a night school, evening school at the New Life organization. And in this partnership, our ministry will be responsible for supervising and implementing the program to ensure the proper allocation of the financial resources, that it be used for tuition, materials, and transportation. And also, we have put together a board that we just really fine-tuning, a management board, Mr. Speaker, that would have the responsibility of reporting back to our ministry so that we can inform this honorable house and the people of Grenada really what, the progress with this life-changing initiative. The institution, NULO, would be responsible for delivering the courses and for collaborating with the National Training Agency for the CVQ certification of the 230 participants. Also for ensuring that each participant has an opportunity for internship and also to start their own business once they are so inclined. NULO will submit quarterly financial reports to our ministry via that management board that we are finalizing now, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, our ministry, through our Department of Skills Development, And I must say that it's a continuation of one of the works of our past Minister of Education, Honorable Anthony Boson. We are creating other avenues for skills development throughout the island. And so we announced very shortly that a National Skills Development Institute will be opened in Snell Hall, St. Patrick, to provide skills training in the area of furniture making to youths who are at risk, and so to provide them with employment and, of course, civic use certification up to level 2. The Institute will be able, Mr. Speaker, to provide furniture for schools, and I wish we can say we'll be ready for September, but it would take time for our board to hire a manager, to get all the workers, and to get the equipment that is needed, the critical, high-quality equipment that is needed to do the task of providing furniture for all the schools in our island, as well as ministerial offices and the public as the need arises. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to work steadfastly for the end of the year, well, before the end of the year, to have this center up and running, and we're doing so in collaboration with the Ministry of Youth, who will be assisting in ensuring that we get the right young men and young women to gain experience at that center. Mr. Speaker, we'll continue to create those centers, and we are in the process now at visiting various locations throughout the island so that we can expand from furniture making to hospitality arts, garment production, construction, just to name a few. All right? Mr. Speaker, at the T.A. Marisho Community College, we are in the process of, making some changes there. Our government has recently approved the appointment of a president as well. That is in keeping with the MOU that was signed in 2016 between the government of Grenada, TAMCC, Petna Foundation, and McMaster University. 2 vice presidents and a director would also be added to that staff in the following months to come. Basically, Mr. Speaker, the objective of this partnership really is to build capacity in TAMCC with new leadership, governance, faculty development, student experience, and curriculum expansion to create a more self-sustaining institution. And so we look forward to make TAMCC our premier tertiary institution in Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. Mr. Speaker, I just would like to end to share with aspects of our scholarship service that we give at our Ministry of Education, Human Resource. Please, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, 2 minutes.
Like you heard the cue, I am wrapping up. So I'd just like to say that in the first half of the year, 2018, a total of 106 scholarships have been awarded thus far, with 63 more being processed. And I want to say St. George's University is responsible for a total of 110 in all, Mr. Speaker. And we're very pleased to say that thus far, 110 persons have gone there to get trained, or have been approved, sorry. And we have 62 more, no, sorry about that. A total of 106 have been been awarded thus far, with SGU being responsible for 62 of those thus far, with 44 more to be processed. We have 12 persons that have gone off to Cuba this year to study total would be going in all to Cuba would be 12, Romania 5, and the Commonwealth would be 4. Mr. Speaker, we are very pleased with the interest that our young persons in Grenada have been showing in this applying for scholarships, but we want to encourage them to continue to do so. They can call the scholarship desk at the Ministry of Education, and they'll be fully accommodated. I thank you for the time.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable Representative for St. John.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to address this Honorable House at its first sitting in this new House of Parliament. I'm also very proud to represent the people of the constituency of St. John on this historic occasion, Mr. Speaker. I was not here for the ceremonial opening, but I want to acknowledge the nutmeg design, which is a national symbol and embedded in our lives in this state. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm speaking on the matters in the Ministry of Climate Resilience, the Environment, Forestry, Fisheries, Disaster Management, and Information. So, Mr. Speaker, it's a super ministry, and in regards to the time, I see our Honorable Member from St. George North West has asked me if I could ask for my time in US. Mr. Speaker, we live in a planet that is home to over 7.5 billion people, and that figure is expected to rise to 9 billion by 2030. That's compared to 1970, when the world had about 3.7 billion. So with this, Mr. Speaker, what is happening now is I could list 15 major environmental problems that our world is facing today. And I would list, okay, like number one is air pollution, water pollution, pollution of the soil, global warming and climate change, overpopulation, depletion of the Earth's natural resources, also loss of different species of wildlife and their habitats, waste disposal, deforestation, ocean acidification, ozone layer depletion, acid rain, urban sprawl, public health issues, land degradation, and genetic engineering. So, Mr. Speaker, that gives you an idea of what is happening in this ministry and what it is that we have to face as a country. But, Mr. Speaker, we can count ourselves lucky because we have about between 110 to 113,000 people to look after, while other states have millions. And I hasten to say that even though we have a small population, we do have to get our act together to protect what is left of our environment. This is what we have, and we all must be good stewards, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, this is why the Ministry of Climate Resilience, etc., are working through the National Climate Change Committee to prioritize projects that will support resource mobilization for development in the following focus areas: sustainable energy, ecosystem-based services, the blue and the green economy. So, Speaker, the proposals are being finalized, and the target is to have at least 10 to 15 proposals finalized that we can include in the 2019 estimates of revenue and expenditure. The team is working with representatives from the Ministry of Finance to ensure that the projects are in keeping with the protocols established for the public sector investment program. This, Mr. Speaker, is a good report on what's going on with the affiliated ministries. I also wish to inform that our ministry conducted a functional review of the various departments to see what we have, what are the gaps in terms of human resources, financial and technical resources. This will help us to put in place the resources we need to allow the ministry to work well. So far, the members of staff are multitasking to get the job done, and we hope that after the second review in August 2018, we will be able to complete that exercise. So, Speaker, the Sargassum beach cleanup was held from May to June, and so far we have spent in excess of $420,310. The beaches that were addressed were Marquis, Sobeys, Telescope, Pittibag High, Hope, Kabiye, and Windward in Carriacou. The ministry supported organizations in the week of World Environment Day, which was June the 7th, in beach cleanup activities throughout the state. The criteria, Mr. Speaker, for selecting a beach for cleanup is usually where the sargassum poses public health concerns in areas where the gases that's emitted is very high, how far the homes are from the seacoast, and the frequency at which people use the water of the sea to bathe, etc., both locals and tourists. So, Speaker, the most recent satellite images of the Atlantic and Caribbean Sea indicates that there are large quantities of the seaweed that are heading towards the Caribbean. There is a high probability that our coastal waters and beaches will continue to experience high levels of seaweed deposits from July to September. This is why, Mr. Speaker, we are making arrangements to collaborate with the Ministry of Works and the Ministry of Health to take action and organize a second round of cleanup. We will focus on Sobeys, Marquis, and Windward. It is very important to take these actions, Mr. Speaker, as the sargassum, if not dealt with, will seriously impact economic and social activities such as fishing, recreational activities, tourism, and the livelihoods of coastal and fishing communities. Access to the sea and fishing grounds, and deployment and operation of fishing gears and boats could be severely impaired. So we will continue to monitor the situation, Mr. Speaker, and we call on the affected communities to also play their part. Mr. Speaker, in forestry, I will now highlight the achievement with respect to forestry and then fisheries. The forest, Mr. Speaker, is a very important natural resource of the state. And I wish to place this in context. The size of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit-Martinique is approximately 78,000 acres, and about 20% of that is forested areas. As you are aware, Mr. Speaker, the forest is a habitat for a number of species, and it provides us with water, lumber, and food. We must be careful enough to ensure that our actions in terms of food production and recreation does not result in land degradation and soil pollution. The use of fertilizers, pesticides, and insecticides must be reduced. Otherwise, we would be polluting ourselves, Mr. Speaker. The Forestry Department is working very hard to ensure that our trails are accessible for both locals and tourists. I wish to draw attention to one of the priority areas for this year, which is the review of the protected areas, the Forest and Wildlife Act, and we will work to table that in this new House, Mr. Speaker, as a key legislation to support building a common vision around climate resistance. Fisheries, Mr. Speaker, I'm very pleased to report that the Fisherman Birthday celebrations on June 29 came out very well. We had a wonderful church service, and the bishop came to bless the boats for us up in Guelph, and we're very grateful for that. I'm very grateful also for the colleague ministers that came and attended our service and helped in the distribution of awards. There's also, Mr. Speaker, the Fisherman Birthday celebration in Grenada this year, which happened on the following Sunday, was very successful, and there were a number of fishers that came out who have been fishing for over 58 years, and we gave them, they were given food baskets and other tokens of appreciation for the contribution to our country, Mr. Speaker. I congratulate the Fisheries Divisions with the organization of the Fishermen celebrations all over the island this year, Mr. Speaker, and the government gave small checks to all the various fisher folks throughout the state, so that in appreciation for the contribution that they made towards our fish export and our food security. So, Speaker, as a ministry, we believe that we must transfer knowledge to the youth of our nation. So again, this year, the Forestry and Fisheries Department are hosting the Summer Camp 2018, and this is the 4th year that is being done. And we also will be doing the Fisheries Camp, and this is about our marine protected areas. So we have a total of 27 students participating in the fisheries, and we have 40 students participating in the forestry summer camp. The children are in 5 groups, and they are doing research on the following topics: land, birds. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could I indulge you for some more time, please? So
2 minutes.
So we could continue, because we enter the hurricane season, and I have a report from NADMA, which is very important.
1 3/4 minutes.
Yes, so Mr. Speaker, the Fisheries Division commenced the Bio-Rock Artificial Reef Pilot Project, and that was done in May. And this project utilizes a low voltage system that goes out to the reef. And what happens, Mr. Speaker, is that this process is generating reefs twice as fast as the natural way. So we have had, structures were established in an area called Benago around Guelph, and the other at Fija Bay in Carriacou. So a total of 16 artificial reef structures were deployed and populated with coral fragments. The program trained 10 community volunteers at each site in the new technology, as well as they were trained, Mr. Speaker, to scuba dive. The Fisheries Division also conducted marine protected area stakeholder consultations in preparation for the development and designation of the Guelph and Livera MPAs. And the first round of community consultation for Livera were held from May the 7th to the 11th, and from Guelph from June the 4th to the 12th. Mr. Speaker, we are also looking at resilience in the fisheries sector. As you know, this is one of our productive sectors that is growing rapidly, but at the same time, it is vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. I'm very pleased to inform that Cabinet has approved COAST, and COAST is the Caribbean Ocean Asset Sustainability Facility, and this is an insurance for the fishing sector, and it would be, in case we have any natural disasters, what would happen is that they would pay off very quickly, so the people in the industry could be up and running very quickly. So, Mr. Speaker, we have 3,404 registered fishers in Grenada, and they have received significant incentives in the form of concessions for the following items: outboard and inboard engines, boat repair material, boat building materials, and navigation and safety equipment. The ministry is making arrangements for hosting the island-wide sensitization workshop with fishers to discuss the rollout of the COAST insurance. And it is anticipated that these will begin on the final week of July 2018. The disaster management and information, Mr. Speaker, we are in the hurricane season, and we would like the nation to know that we are putting all hands on deck in ensuring that our disaster management systems are in good shape. NADMA, as an agency, is in the process of building capacity of representatives from different communities throughout the state to ensure that we are ready. From June the 11th to the 15th, a shelter management training and assessment was conducted. This, Mr. Speaker, was very successful, and I wish to inform that this training was necessary because the vulnerabilities at the level of institutions and communities was very high. So, Speaker, to ensure that all stakeholders are on the same page, NAGMA hosted the annual stakeholder consultation under the theme, Understanding Vulnerabilities, Identifying Gaps, Building Resilience, and that will be happening on July the 12th. It was done on July the 12th. So I'm pleased to report that it was a two-day workshop and representatives from 45 public and private sector organizations attended the sessions. And this was indeed very good, as it demonstrates not only interest, but that they came out ready to share how well prepared they are. Mr. Speaker, could I have one more minute, please?
Thank you very much, Honorable Representative. You may continue at the next sitting.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I will take my seat right. Mr. Speaker.
Take off the mic. Take off the mic. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was about to tell my friend that I will yield some time to him, but I don't think we have that system in our parliament. Mr. Speaker, I want to join others in congratulating the government on a wonderful job for our parliament. I also want to take note of the comments that you made, that the people are now looking down on us to make sure, and we look up to them to make sure that we do the bidding that they have sent us here to do. So I also want to join my colleagues in thanking the people for what they've done to have us here and to commit to doing what they ask us to do, and to always remain in touch with them in that regard. Mr. Speaker, I will address two issues. I'll try to be as brief as possible. I will take the Ministry of Labour first. Mr. Speaker, we've conducted in Labour polls in several institutions, several businesses: Concord Distributors, Goddard Catering, Home Pride Bakery, Steelworks. We've conducted polls there because the workers asked for those. We've continued meetings with the trade unions and the employers in the country. We are also responsible for work permits, and without going into all the details, I'll just say that so far this year, we've collected $1,161,000 for work permits. I think the amount of work permits indicate the kind of work that is being done. You know, we get quite a few applications for very specialized technical construction work. For example, some of the new hotels require very detailed work. The Minister of Tourism indicated that not only are we expanding the rooms, but we're expanding the quality of the rooms. And I think the applications for work permits send a strong message that we need to get our people, and I want to commend the Ministry of Education for doing that, upscaling and training our people for the kind of new technical work. People are not just these hotels that come in, the craft, the quality that they're asking for is sometimes beyond the persons that we have in our country to deliver. So we find ourselves, even with the unemployment being too high, we still have to import some labor because we don't have the quality. In fact, I give the story of trying to find some plumbers one weekend in St. George's and unable to do it because while we have many of the youth on the block who are unemployed, they are not skilled. So I want to commend the Ministry of Education, particularly for the vocational training that they're undertaking, and I hope we expand it as we go forward, and I think it will go well to reduce the amount of work permits we have to give. Not that we are complaining because we made $1.5 million in work permits, but we prefer that our people do the work locally. Mr. Speaker, I want to address an important issue too, that of the Canada Seasonal Work Program. It's a program that everybody knows about. They call it the Farm Program in Canada, and we've had quite a lot of applications. I want to say this, Mr. Speaker, that we are in the process, with the help of our Consul General in Toronto and a fine group of persons in Toronto, we are working to expand the program. Over the last many years, the program has been for apple picking. In fact, people call it the apple picking program. Now it's expanding for many of the countries in the region. For example, countries like Jamaica take advantage of the program, having expanded it to the hospitality industry, the construction industry, and other farms. We are in a process of working with a company that has been established with Grenadians in Toronto to expand the program. So not only would persons be going to Canada for picking apples, but they will be going to do construction. In our down season, they'll be going to the hospitality industry, and that will do two things. It will help people find employment in Canada seasonally, but it would also help to train our people in the hospitality arts and in construction. So I want to commend the persons in Canada publicly who are doing much to expand the program so that our people can benefit. So while we've done a lot, we have so far this year, 67 workers have gone off to Canada, and that's a commendable amount. But we believe it's still not sufficient to make us happy. So we are working, as I said, to expand it. But there are some problems that I want to point out to our people so that they can help us solve it. Some of the companies in Canada, remember, it is not a bilateral relationship between the government of Canada and the government of Grenada. There are private companies in Canada, farms, construction companies, who are asking for labor. So they have particular requirements. They are asking that we get people with particular skills. They are asking for certain literacy requirements. They are asking for people without criminal records. So the requirements for the program are not set by us. They are set by the people in Canada who require us to get the labor for them to go up there. So we must recognize that not everybody who applies will be accepted by the persons in Canada. It's not a decision being taken by your minister or your MP. It's a decision being taken by the persons in Canada who are asking for the labor. So I said to persons, you know, for example, I've been saying to them, if you have a criminal record, there's now a mechanism. Thanks to this government again. We've passed the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act. And that act allows persons with all criminal records, some 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, depending on the nature of the crime, to clean the record. And I want to commend the Attorney General, Dr. Joseph, for pushing that and to have us now with that kind of legislation. It means that many of our young people who years ago would have had you know, get locked up for joint, get locked up for because they cost somebody. Now they're able to have a clean record so they can go on with their lives. And I think it's one of the most commendable things that has been done by this government. So you find that some of the people who have to go off to Canada, they may have a criminal record. Well, let's not apply with a record. Before you come to the application process, go get your record clean. I think it costs about $50 to do it, or speak to some attorney. I'm not advertising for lawyers. No, you can do it yourself. But if you can't do it yourself, call an attorney, call me, I'll show you the process. So that is one thing. Then they ask for certain literacy levels, the ability to read and write. Sometimes it's easy to acquire that skill. So speak to the people in the Ministry of Education, speak to your community, speak to your MP, so they can help raise your level of literacy, so you, not only for this program, so generally. Some of the persons who go to Canada, and I'm telling you now as the parents, maybe as the persons who go yourselves, they don't behave properly sometimes when they go abroad. And the employer in Canada will send a note and say, you see these 10 guys? They did work hard, they did well. But you see these two, they give real trouble. I want them back. When you go, please ensure, and yourselves, when you speak to your kids or whoever, ensure that they do properly so that they are. Because we find from year to year, the employers send to us and say, I have somebody in Dabo, for example, a friend of mine. He started about 8 years ago, and every year he goes up. Why? Because the employer believes that he did a good job, so they want him to come back. So I just urge the applicants to do that. So I'm saying all of this because I know some people are disappointed when they don't get in with the program, and I know some of my colleagues are under pressure because people are calling, I want to get onto the Canadian program. Well, we are working on it. We are working to expand the program, but it's going to take time, and as I said, the application process is not complete with the decision of MPs or any of us here. It's completed when the persons in Canada, the owners of the farms, the owners of the construction companies, they decide these are the people we want. We send them a list. In fact, there's one gentleman who actually came to Grenada last year and met with the workers himself, and he said to the ministry, these are the guys I want because of my interviews with them. So I spent some time on that because I know it's an issue that's out there and an issue that is concerning to many of us. So in the Ministry of Labor, I don't want to say too much. On the next occasion, I will go into more details with the Ministry for Foreign Affairs. I just want to report that we held a meeting of the foreign ministers of CARICOM in Nassau a couple of months, last month, what's called COFCO, in preparation for the heads of government meeting that took place in Jamaica about 3 weeks ago. Now, in the COFCO meeting in Bahamas, we met with the delegation from the Canadian government and the delegation from the US government. And in both instances, we conducted serious bilateral discussions between the Caribbean and Canada. And one of the things we are trying to urge Canada is on the issue of these new visa requirements. And I'm reporting that to say that we are doing our best to see what can be done, because there are some very restrictive requirements now where you have to go to Trinidad yourself to get the visas. Now, we have said to the Canadian government that we believe that is a step in the wrong direction in terms of the relations between Canada and CARICOM. And I make a public statement so that the Canadian government understands that this is a matter that concerns our people. Now imagine a family of 3 goes to Trinidad, it's the same situation with Barbados, and we have said the same thing to the US government. You go, you raise your money, you go to Trinidad, you raise $10,000, and they tell you can't get a visa. Imagine the devastating impact that has on the finances of our people. So we have been trying to work hard with the Canadian government to see if something can be done about that. The traditional relationship between Canada and the governments of the region should require the Canadian government to take note of that and do something. You remember, years ago, the Canadian government sent their officials to Grenada and did the applications, at least they do the interviews. And when they go back, they do. So we are trying to work with the Canadian government. Prime Minister Trudeau seems to be a progressive young man, so we're trying to work with him to plead on that. The US government, too, we are also trying to urge them in that direction to see. Well, you know, the present U.S. administration, I'm not sure how far we will get with that, but we are working with it. I want to report, Mr. Speaker, can I have well, I think 2 minutes is what's been given. With respect to our bilateral relations, I want to report that the Kingdom of Morocco recently visited, a delegation visited Grenada, and I visited the Kingdom of Morocco. We are finalizing arrangements for the continued support with respect to fertilizer, with respect to vocational scholarships, healthcare, and budgetary support. So we have very good continuing relations with the Kingdom of Morocco, and I want to thank publicly the Kingdom of Morocco for the assistance they've given us over these last several years. I also want to say that the Cabinet has approved a memorandum of understanding between the government of Grenada and the government of the People's Republic of China with respect to what's called the Belt and Road Project. That's a project where China is going to be investing billions and billions of dollars throughout the world. We will be making some public statements on that, so I expect that you will get more information, but the Cabinet has approved that, and we expect an official visit to China in the upcoming year, where we will sign an agreement with the People's Republic of China where more assistance will be given. I also want to say that we are re-engaged in developing the diaspora aspect of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and I expect that that will lead to much. With respect to the CARICOM heads of government, I just want to say this, that the last meeting, and I know the Prime Minister will speak on it more than I will, what I saw in CARICOM, the last meeting, first of all, I attended the meeting in my capacity as Prime Minister. I think Prime Minister, it was the first time that for many, many years that all of the heads attended. But I think the biggest thing for Grenada there and the Caribbean was pushing forward on the single market and economy that Minister Joseph spoke about. We all have to go back where we all push for CARICOM and Caribbean integration. There have been forces in the region that have been moving against that. I think the meeting in Jamaica last week was a great step in that direction. Agreements were signed with respect to what we call contingent rights of persons who go to different islands. Again, we will have some more public education. But I think the essential point I want to make on this, that I think we in Grenada must lead the way in pushing for further Caribbean integration. Our fathers and forefathers pushed a lot, and I think recently, especially with the report, what's called the Golden Commission report, that indicated to us the need for us to move further in integration. At the meeting also, there was a report on what's called the Marijuana Commission, which is looking at joint efforts in that regard, and I want to report that I think out of the meeting, we did quite a bit to bring the region closer together. In closing, I just want to welcome to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, somebody you know very well, Ms. Keisha Alexander. I think I see her sitting in the crowd, who has now joined the Ministry for Foreign Affairs, and I guess the Prime Minister will welcome her replacement. And I'm welcoming her to my ministry, having moved over from the Prime Minister. I don't know if it's a promotion or demotion, but we welcome her. I think it's a promotion, really, but but Keisha is a wonderful addition to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and I think wonderful work will be done. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Representative for St. George Southeast.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, permit me to commence my contribution by recognizing the facility that we are in and the great and important role played by the Ministry of Infrastructure and the personnel within, Mr. Speaker. We are very limited in staff, and for the last few years, we have been working diligently with UNOPS and with the other donors in ensuring that this structure meets its requirement, Mr. Speaker. Because as beautiful as the facility is, the structural integrity being great, it is the responsibility of the Ministry of Infrastructure ultimately to ensure that we sit in this building and it will not collapse. We're not saying, Mr. Speaker, that anything will go wrong, but we have to sit on top of it from day one, Mr. Speaker. And I think that the staff in the ministry did an extremely good job in ensuring that. Mr. Speaker, to continue with the ministerial statement, I want to start with transportation. an area that is of concern to all of us, Mr. Speaker. In the many meetings, including the one they held with the Prime Minister, this topic, Mr. Speaker, dominated the meeting. It shows the importance that it is to us and that the people of Grenada, Carriacou, and PT Martinique really wants us to move ahead with this project, Mr. Speaker. Transportation, item 1, park and walk. We have been speaking about this for many, many years now. We park in the area, east and west of the city, and we will walk. Or, Mr. Speaker, the intention is to pay one fee for your parking and for the shuttle. It's your option. And this, Mr. Speaker, we are discussing now with the stakeholders and we'll go to Cabinet for final approval very soon. I dare say, Mr. Speaker, Grenadians are in total support of it, and we should see this through quickly, Mr. Speaker. St. Andrew and the Grenville situation is not one important. It is just because the congestion is more critical in St. George, and we'll start there. But we come into Grenville with the same principle, Mr. Speaker. The times for parking and commercial activities on the Grandlands Road or any road, we want to introduce time for parking. Could be your front door, your front yard. Once the public is using the roadway, you're going to park at the time that we will collectively work with you to say. So in the rush hours, your car should not be in the road in front of you. Similarly, Mr. Speaker, when we're doing commercial business, we know in the Grandlands Valley and in the town of St. George, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the market, we have the commercial goods truck parking up there. Well, no, it will be off hours, and you will do your commercial business off hours. In the Grandlands Valley area, where we do have the problem, in St. Mark, St. Andrew, there will be a special time. So the commercial persons may have to come out maybe 5 to 7, do your business, or 11 to something, do your business. We're working with them. And Mr. Speaker, I want to compliment the persons now in the Department of Transportation, because we have held many, many meetings. Again, people getting from Grandlands Valley, we went from Grandlands. We were looking at the hotel belt alone to bring the workers, particularly our female workers, from the hotel belt to the north of the country. But lo and behold, Mr. Speaker, there are nurses, there are commercial, a lot of other people are in the same boat. So when we work with the bus associations to get them from one point to the next, we will not be only solving a problem that we thought were limited only to the hotel sector, to many other sectors, Mr. Speaker. Then traffic wardens. So we can make all the plans that we have, but how do we enforce it? The police have already indicated that they will come to the Ministry of National Security with some traffic wardens in town. These will not be policemen per se, but they will have the authority. Say you should not park there, you will pay the fine, or you will be told. So very soon we'll see these being implemented. These are what you call, they refer to as the low-hanging fruits that could be done quickly without massive investments. And we know where we are, or tight we are on finances, Mr. Speaker, with all the reports that we have implemented and all the oversight committees that we have put in place, Mr. Speaker. Roundabout resizing. For example, at Grandlands, Mr. Speaker, close to the sugar mill, that roundabout is very large, and traffic cannot go straight through. So we'll get 2 lanes, resize the roundabout, and you'll have 2 lanes, so the traffic can continue flowing straight across if we do not have to go down the valley, Mr. Speaker. All of these quick things to be done with limited expenses, Mr. Speaker. Then garages. Most times you could say we have roadside garages. The major garages are few and far in between. But the law requires that garages pay a fee. It is not the fee only, Mr. Speaker, but again, it is hampering the traffic flow in the town. So we'll be meeting with the first team this week, Mr. Speaker. That's in St. George, all the garages in St. George, and we go to the various parishes so that they understand that they must relocate, and we'll work with the time frame for so doing, Mr. Speaker. Then we have the environmental issues from the garage. They have to know that this cannot continue. But we're not simply coming down with a mighty hand because we have the law behind us. We are meeting with all of them, Mr. Speaker, and we're asking them for their cooperation. Because they themselves, when they're driving and they pass by another garage, some people have heard them quarreling. But they say, but you do the same thing back there. So why are you quarreling now? So all of us are in the same boat and we want to move forward, Mr. Speaker. Then fundamentally, the human resource capability of the garages. We set up a quick garage and we're repairing people's vehicles. But do we have the qualified personnel to ensure that we do it properly? This will be done. So if you have a garage, you'll be registered and we know what sort of services that you can offer. All of those things, Mr. Speaker, we want to put immediately into effect. And Mr. Speaker, we want to move to the debushing program. This has been greatly restructured this year. We have reinstituted the wardens, referred to as environmental wardens, maybe in the period 2004 to 2008, but now we want to call them road wardens so that you understand that they're really concentrating on the road. These are teams that will be working year-round. What we have been done over the many years is that we come out on the debushing seasonal program and simply cutlass. We do not see people establishing the drains and cleaning the culverts. So with the onslaught of the rains, it cannot go in the drain, it cannot pass through culverts, so it goes over banks and do tremendous damage. It does tremendous damage to our roads and our network, Mr. Speaker. So these wardens will be working year-round, 64 in all, Mr. Speaker. So they go from year 1 to year 2, they clean the drains, etc. So when the rains come, we have that done. The seasonal debushing, but still will come in and really deal with the grass. Per se. And then, Mr. Speaker, we also have them working on farms. So out of the seasonal debushes, which will be reduced because we're spending the same $8 million for the 4 fortnights. So you'll have 64 of these crews, and we'll go down from over 500 now to 378 of the regular debushing crews. They will also be deployed on some farms to provide labor. They will be involved in the beautification as well. Both the seasonal and the wardens will be involved. So even though it's started by the seasonal persons, they're not on the job, then the wardens who are there year-round could pick up and continue the care for the plant, Mr. Speaker. The Sargassum will be deploying some persons in this area as well, particularly from the seasonal crews. We'll use the machines. We have the complaints that when the machines go onto the beaches, then it takes the sand and the sand and the sargassum out. So yes, we're removing the sargassum, but we're impacting on the sand. So there, if we have some men, that the machine will do the bulk of the work, but when it reaches the sand, then we can have our debushers with a little fork and spade, so we do not destroy the beach. We're working jointly with the Ministry of the Environment, so we can do what is necessary to not only clean, but to protect, Mr. Speaker. And then the tools. It is important to note that we do have a problem. Every year, we'll buy tools for the workers, and after 2 years, they disappear. And these reach $500,000. Right? So what we are doing now, Mr. Speaker, we are ensuring that the contractor will come, will sign up, the tools will belong to the contractor. They will pay for it over a period, and these are only the wardens because they're here year-round. So over 1 year, collecting $100, we collect $1,200 from them so they can buy the forks, the spades, and the wheelbarrows. It will belong to them, Mr. Speaker, and I can bet you that they will safeguard it. And they will only, because they will only come back to the ministry maybe 4 years after to replace a wheelbarrow or to replace one fork, under which circumstance we'll use the same principle. We purchase it for you, by that time you can purchase for yourself, but if we purchase for you, you will repay, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the market, Grenville. Now that the buses have moved from the area close to the market to the bus terminus, we do have an economic problem. The vendors are not paying for the booths, not perhaps because they're bad pay, but because the economic activities have fallen tremendously. So we have over $70,000 to collect, Mr. Speaker. And it's not that the vendors are running. They're coming to us to ask to move to the bus terminus, but there's no space in the bus terminus. So this is something, working with the representatives from the area in particular, and as a nation, that we must handle. We place them in the vegetable markets, and now the buses have moved, so economic activities fall, Mr. Speaker. But we have to collect our monies. To them, I feel that they don't care whether we ask them to move or not to move. They're just piling up the debts, and they can't pay for it, no activities. So we want the people to know that we empathize with the situation, Mr. Speaker. But you also want to tell them, give it up before we run you. If you see you cannot make it, come in, please, and give up the key. And maybe we'll make a representation, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I have 2 more minutes just to complete, Mr. Speaker?
4 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, the toilet facilities in the Grenville market, we pay $18,000 per month, but we have toilets in the facility. So we'll be moving into it. The Port Authority will be taking it over. They want the toilets to be open before, not before they come in. But remember, that's $18,000 every month, Mr. Speaker. The post office, Mr. Speaker, we attended a meeting of the Caribbean Postal Union where you know that mails are no longer there. 400,000 persons in the U.S. losing their jobs and so forth. We are concentrating now on financial services, ICT, and the trade. Right now, the post office is engaged in bringing in things. So we're losing monies going out. But we concentrate on the micro, small, and medium enterprise persons doing small products in Grenada and getting them out, particularly to our diaspora. So this is where the postal cooperation, not only in Grenada, but the region will be going, Mr. Speaker. We'll be signing MOUs with Customs, USPS, the United States Postal Service, because we'll get more. If an item is coming to Grenada and the post in the US can say, you could get it in Grenada in 2 days, pay $60. But we in Grenada cannot facilitate it getting out. So we'll sign the MOU, we'll do what is necessary to ensure that it gets to its destination in the 2 days, and instead of receiving $5, we'll receive something like $25 US for timing. So we are working towards this, again, not only in Grenada, but in the region, Mr. Speaker. And I want to close, Mr. Speaker, with the point made by the Minister Oliver Joseph, representative for St. David's, when he said that we must reduce the cost of electricity if the economy must grow. This has been said by many experts many times over, Mr. Speaker. The situation is, as we stand now, WRB, the majority shareholder, has taken the government to arbitration, and they're asking for us to pay now. Why? Because they want to leave. No matter how many times we sit with them and say, we have opened up the market so that we can reduce the price, so that the same investor can come in Grenada and he can put solar panel on his roof to reduce the cost and take in people and give them employment and produce at a lower rate. These are the things that we have put into place, and that's why we're facing the situation we are today. An arbitration where that particular group is saying, I want to go, pay me and go. Yet we see certain activities as if there is some sort of, desire to stay. There's no desire to stay, Mr. Speaker. From where we are today, as soon as the arbitration rules, they're gone. They don't want to stay. So the lovely things we see all about this, that, and all about happening will be, Mr. Speaker, a thing of the past. Because we've asked them to stay. And they say, no, we don't want to stay. Because of an agreement that was signed in 1994, all the arbitration tribunal must do is interpret the agreement. And once it's interpreted in the way that they want to do it, they'll be out of Grenada, Mr. Speaker. But the environment is there, the market is open, and we will be encouraging persons to come in to invest so that we can reduce the price of electricity in Grenada.
Thank you, Honourable Representative for St. George Northwest.
Mr. Speaker, enough has been said on the ambience. But just to point out, I just went to the bathroom a while ago and I saw a hotel suite. So I was taken back, Mr. Speaker. It looks like a place you'd want to be on a regular basis, Mr. Speaker.
I try to provide the best.
Mr. Speaker, just quickly on some ministerial statements because I realize we're running late and a few of us must have to go to a major funeral this afternoon. Mr. Speaker, you know, the announcement of the pension and gratuity payments to retired public servants who, of course, were denied those rights when the People's Revolutionary Government that did away with pension for public servants in the way it used to be. And of course, the court has ruled So we have now agreed, worked with the trade union, the leadership, the government negotiating team led by the CAPSEC, have now agreed on the payment for public workers, those public workers from those who are in the public service hired between April 4th, 1983 and February 22nd, 1985. That payment would be over $7.2 million, and that payment with the Ministry of Finance and staff working extremely hard to ensure by the end of this month, these people for the first time will receive the rights of benefits that they never had before. The Minister of Foreign Affairs already talked about the CARICOM heads of government, but just to point out two things. In addition, Mr. Speaker, the issue of the CCJ, we witnessed the inauguration of the second president of the CCJ, Sir Honorable Saunders, a native of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and say this is one reason, Mr. Speaker, based on the positive aspects of what is resulting from the work of the CCJ since its inception, that we will, as a government, we're moving in a very serious way to have that referendum later this year. With Antigua and Barbuda, we're hoping to do it at the same date, and hopefully with the leadership of the Attorney General, that we can provide the education and the necessary support to have us have this passed sometime this year. We notice there is some support, and we hope that it's going to be consistent and remain so from some elements of the main opposition. We look forward and to give them credit, because this is not about the new National Party's government. This is about the country, the future of our children and children and grandchildren, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, just also the issue of transport was one of the serious ones, because we saying, as the Minister of Foreign Affairs said, the emphasis was on CSME. But CSME, without people being able to interact, doesn't make a lot of sense. So the major decisions were in fact taken to move on the issue of transport and different aspects. I think the Minister of Tourism will be talking about that later. We also discussed the issue of non-communicable diseases, Mr. Speaker, for the health areas. It is recognized that one country has almost been known as the amputation capital of the world. Diabetes, sugar, high blood pressure, these are issues, health issues that can be dealt with by lifestyle changes. And I recall, Mr. Speaker, a couple of my colleague heads got up and was speaking on that subject, and one head intervened and said, you should not be speaking, let Keith Mitchell speak on it. He's in a better position to speak about health issues. But that was a major discussion, and I think it's recognized, Mr. Speaker, that this issue of health is a serious economic issue. It's not only a health issue, because if we do not take care of it, we keep spending millions and millions of dollars we do not have on health issues. Mr. Speaker, we witnessed also yesterday the launch of the e-passport. I don't need to go further into that. But Mr. Speaker, only recently, and very soon, we're receiving $30 million US from the World Bank through IDA. This, what it means, Mr. Speaker, this is the first country that is able to access this facility that was set up a few years ago. Grenada is going to be the first country, not only in the region and around the globe, $30 million US, Mr. Speaker. And the terms of that loan, 40 years loan, 10-year grace, you don't have to pay a cent in the first 10 years. I'm sure I wouldn't be here then. So other members would be responsible for paying it. And the interest rate is 0.75%. That's a gift, Mr. Speaker. So the Ministry of Finance staff is working on how we'll allocate this. The only thing we cannot do, Mr. Speaker, is use it to pay salaries. So I don't want anybody to think in time we get big back pay and increase in salaries and so on and so on. I just want to qualify this importantly, Mr. Speaker. So, Speaker, we have now, Cabinet have now agreed to establish some working committees. We recognize there are a number of areas with increasing resources that we have and increasing demands for services. There are a number of major issues that we must confront. And with the bureaucracy in place and the slowness in getting things done, we decided to establish committees which will be led by different individuals we believe will be able to give the time and effort to bring not just public servants and ministers of government, but also private sector people would be members of that group. And the first group would be the group called a major infrastructural area, government buildings, Mr. Speaker. And that is going to be including the new Governor General's house, which we hope must be done within this particular period of governance. A new police headquarters, instead of having several pieces of police building all over the place costing a lot of money. One major area, a place has been identified for that headquarters. A new legal complex with the problems we have with the court system these days, with the lack of ability for the court to function effectively. We'll have the Ministry of Legal Affairs, the court system, and all available services within the judicial process will be housed in that particular area. York House has been an eyesore. That is also going to be rehabilitated and made a heritage site. We have to decide what we will do with that, what services we'll provide in that particular area. And a general refurbishment of government buildings. Government has several buildings all over the place. It's dilapidated, not being used, cannot be used. We won't fix it, but then other people fix their building and buy and build other buildings and we rent from them. Does that make any sense? So we're going to be investing some serious monies. And other major issue areas, government buildings that we'll be working on. And we're asking a young man in Senator Cox to lead that with several persons from the private sector and other government officers to lead this exercise. And we know with his energy and, of course, vitality we have seen so far, we expect him to do that very quickly for us. The next committee is the transformative projects. So the Certes Port and Marina project, we're going to embark in, and this is a major part of the rural development program. The Karakou Airport expansion will be another major one. Knowledge centers around the country in every parish, empowering our young people and providing them the opportunities to compete in the 21st century. The youth projects in several areas, whether it's youth in agriculture, youth sewing project, youth furniture making. These are going to be transformative projects we're going to be spending serious monies on. And also, Mr. Speaker, that again would be led by a young, vibrant member of Parliament, Senator Minister Kate Lewis, would head this committee. Those of us who are getting older, Mr. Speaker, we're giving the young people an opportunity with the energies that they have. And the last one, Mr. Speaker, the productive sector projects. And that would include tourism. And these committees would be reporting to Cabinet and reporting to the ministers involved in those areas. So they're not by themselves without any accountability. Tourism, which means hotel expansion projects and so on. The agro-processing, agricultural activities, agribusiness activities, manufacturing. And that will be led by not the youngest, but also a new member, and not so young, but young enough, Peter David, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, so I want to move on to another area that I want to mention, government programs. We have now, of course, started the program, the Uniform Assistance Program. We've spent over $950,000 already in this program. And it's counting because more applications are coming in. We may have to get additional allocation for this. The Special Projects Program, now with an additional $5 million has been added, which would be part of the supplementals that we see here today, which would provide more opportunities for doing community projects and also providing employment opportunity throughout the length and breadth of the country. The Needy Assistance Program will receive an additional $300,000, sorry, Mr. Speaker, which will be able to help our young people, or persons who in need, to provide certain services that they may not be able to provide for themselves. Mr. Speaker, number 6 would be the increase in the Elderly Citizens Seed Program, Mr. Speaker. That program we did mention. We're going to add another $100, Mr. Speaker, to a household throughout the length and breadth of the country for the citizens of that program. An additional over $1 million, Mr. Speaker. And that first payment, well, I think will be started, I think, next Thursday, I believe. Right? Am I right? Finance? Next Thursday, Finance has said yes. Next Thursday, the first batch will receive that additional $100, Mr. Speaker. So some were saying that we're fooling people and they will not get it. Well, anytime this government says something, but we did qualify it and said if this fiscal space, and some were making a joke about this fiscal space, but it seems that the fiscal space is always working, Mr. Speaker, because we are continuing to meet those conditions. Yes. Mr. Speaker, finally, I want to, two items I want to say something additional for. There's an issue, Mr. Speaker. If the Speaker of this House, if the country wants to move the Speaker of this House, the members of Parliament can remove the Speaker. If the government wants to move the Governor General, the Prime Minister recommends to the Queen to move the Governor. If the people want to move the Prime Minister, the people vote him out. The government can move a permanent secretary from one place to the next. No noise, no problem. But Mr. Speaker, there's some of us in this country that believe that a job that we have as a public servant, we cannot be touched. We cannot be moved. So anybody else could be moved, but we cannot be moved. Not fired, not disciplined. And I'm saying this, Mr. Speaker, because it's something I've been speaking about for a while, not now. I think we have created it, those of us who led this country, we have created that atmosphere. By keeping people in one job too long, that it becomes, as far as they're concerned and what the people feel, this job is theirs. And if you move them, even if you promote them, then you victimize them. I don't understand this mindset, Mr. Speaker. It seems to me if you're doing so well in a job, you should be very happy to move to another area higher, to provide service in an area that's not doing well. It should not be perceived that you are being victimized in any sense of the word. Because this government has shown, Mr. Speaker, we're not a perfect government. This government has made many mistakes in the past. But nobody can say in this period of governance, the last 10 years or so, that we have made decisions based on any political perception of politics. We've seen the government recommendation for permanent secretaries in the last period from since general elections. No one can say. If anything else, people are kind of wondering about the decisions. But we are convinced that people have a right, whether they vote for you or not, to the service of the country. And we have a responsibility to give them an opportunity to do so. Mr. Speaker, only recently, a few officers were moved transferred from the customs to jobs of a similar status and category in the public service. And, you know, I make this point because I think it's a very serious point. And listen to this, Mr. Speaker. I have to refer to it because it came to my attention this morning. So excuse me if I'm a little late. Listen to this. NNP strikes again. 4 officers in customs have been transferred this week, including the PRO of the Public Workers Union, Brian Grimes. The others are Alva Andal, Cavalette, and Sheldon Joseph. Grimes is being sent to the Ministry of Cooperatives in a similar position. The orders came from the powerhouse persons in government. Mr. Speaker, and you know what is significant about this, Mr. Speaker? No one has been disciplined, no one has been fired. What they did not say, one of the persons who are transferred is the son of a minister of government. So the NNP is victimizing the son of a minister of government. That is significant. But they won't say that. They will not say that. Not my son, Mr. Speaker. I'm just making this point. For some people, if you're in a job, and I don't know what is taking place there, that you're so happy with it, if you promote them, they don't want to move. Why? I know of some cases where you feel somebody's doing a good job, you said, look, you need to go and help there. I'm not going. You promoted, a higher salary, more emolument. Why you do not want to go? I only could conclude one thing, Mr. Speaker, the juice flowing. I say, Mr. Speaker, we must come of age. I said to the staff of the ministry, Prime Minister's ministry this morning, before I came here, to the senior management board, that when I leave this job, I'm going to be one of the strongest advocates for advising government and the country as a whole, make sure that people do not remain in one job too long, especially when certain things are, you can say, juice may be flowing. And therefore, you have to protect them because a good person may come into a particular area of responsibility and be extremely good. But you leave them there too long. The best of us, even any one of us, may find ourselves in difficulties because people can, in fact, be tempted. All of us are. Mr. Speaker, I end on this note. But to say to you, I will not be able to stay for the whole session because I do have to go to that special funeral for the police officer who died a couple of weeks ago. But I will remain on. When I leave, it's not because I leave for any other reason but that particular reason. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for your patience.
Thank you, Prime Minister. I know also that there is another parliamentary representative who may want to leave to attend that funeral also. So we would work as much as we can. What time do we have now? It's 1200 hours. Oh, it's going closer to 13?
Yes.
Or is it about 1:45?
I'll join you.
We'll move on. We'll move and see how far we get.
Item number 13, personal explanations. Item number 14, motions.
Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the following motion standing in my name, which reads, whereas debate on the gracious address delivered by the Governor General on the occasion of the ceremonial state opening of the first session of the 10th Parliament on Friday, 27th April 2018, was deferred to a date to be named. Be it resolved that the said address be now debated by the House.
Honourable members, the question is that whereas the debate of the gracious address delivered by the Governor General on the occasion of the ceremonial state opening of the first session of the 10th Parliament on Friday, 27th April 2018 was deferred to a date to be named. Be it now resolved that this address be debated by the House. Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I propose the amendment to the resolution so that it should not read, be it resolved that the said address be deferred to a date to be named.
Honorable members, there's an amendment to the resolution, and it now reads, be it resolved that the debate on the motion be deferred to a date to be named. So it now reads that the motion be deferred to a date to be named. Those who are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I now propose the said resolution that the said address, be it resolved that the said address be deferred to a date to be named. That's what just passed.
So, honorable members, this address, the debate is deferred to a date to be named. Minister for Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I stand to move the following motion standing in my name, which reads as follows. Whereas Section 23 of the Public Finance Management Act number 17 of 2015 provides for the supplementary appropriations to meet additional requirements of the state of Grenada during any financial year for which an appropriation bill has been approved, and whereas it has become necessary to provide for additional expenditure for the fiscal year 1st January to 31st December 2018, as determined by the Minister and approved by the Cabinet. Be it resolved that the supplementary estimates of expenditure for the period July 1st, 2018 to 31st December 2018 be approved.
Honorable members, the question proposed is that the supplementary appropriation for the period July 1st to December 31st, 2018 be approved. Minister for Finance.
Mr. Speaker, as this is a money motion, I wish to signal that I have the Governor General's support to proceed with this motion.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, Section 23 of the Public Finance Management Act 17 of 2015 stipulates that if in a financial year it is found that the amount budgeted for a particular purpose is insufficient or there is no budgetary allocation, a supplementary estimate detailing the sums required should be approved by the House of Representatives. Mr. Speaker, therefore, in this regard, we are seeking to introduce a supplementary appropriation bill in this Honorable House, providing for the issue of such sums from the Consolidated Fund, and therefore the attached supplementary estimate totals $36,134,512.88. Mr. Speaker, this sum includes the following: $28,106,351.88 for capital expenditure. I stress, Mr. Speaker, capital expenditure. And this is funded also, as I stress, entirely by external grants. external grants, not external loans, external grants. $8,028,161 million from local funds, but that is local savings from the revenue projected for 2018 and which has been surpassed so far. In fact, the combined surpluses so far from revenues from just taking in inland revenue and customs has reached over $13+ million so far this year. In other words, the staff of the Ministry of Finance and the government fiscal management is certainly paying tremendous dividends for the country and, of course, economic activity in the country as a whole. Mr. Speaker, it's important when I mentioned it's not loans. In other words, we are not increasing the debt. But what we're doing with $28 million plus for capital expenditure, we are increasing the capital stocks, which means possible expansion of economic activity, which means the growth of the GDP. So if the debt is not increased and your GDP has increased, in effect, you are moving in the direction that the international community and all of us expect to move, which is a lower debt to GDP ratio. In other words, it's a win-win situation, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wish to highlight a few critical areas that the amounts would finance. The increase in payments made to the elderly by $100 during the 2018 budget presentation was announced. That total, Mr. Speaker, will be $1,802,400. That would be one of the expenditure items that will be included in that particular cap increase in expenditure. Two, Mr. Speaker, the government has remained resolute in its position that the vexing issue of pension to public officers must be resolved. Towards this end, we have allocated in the supplementary estimate an amount of $4.4 million to settle payments to persons who would have been appointed on the permanent establishment on or after April 4th, 1983 to February 22nd, 1985, and are eligible to receive a pension. It is important to note that the overall cost of this undertaking is $7.2 million, which is $4.4 million, which will cover from local funds, while $2.8 million will constitute retroactive payments, will be settled with grants funding outside of the appropriation amount. Mr. Speaker and colleagues, this is the first phase of the pension reform restoration process. We have therefore come a long way, but we have a long set of miles to go. Therefore, we continue a dialogue with the public workers unions to ensure that we reach an amicable settlement as far as the post-1985 personnel would be involved. Mr. Speaker, the regularization of nurses at item number 3 on the different sections that I've said I would mention. Regulation of nurses and payments to teachers as per signed union agreement would also be redressed, and that amount is an additional $1.4 million. Again, this government again commits itself and meeting that payment. The fourth item, Mr. Speaker, an allocation of $500,000 was made in support of the needy and uniform assistance program, a combined amount for both of these. Mr. Speaker, regarding capital expenditure, allocations were made for major road works and special projects, just to name a few, which would aid in the provision of more opportunities, more jobs in the rural part of the country, and at the same time dealing with the infrastructure and the expansion of economic activity in the country as a whole. Mr. Speaker, rest assured that the Ministry of Finance will undertake all the necessary assessment to ensure that the supplementary estimates conforms with all fiscal rules, especially the primary expenditure rule. Mr. Speaker, it's important to state this because there is a perception, because the so-called structural adjustment, I shouldn't say so-called, the structural adjustment program has now ended, has so-called ended, that in effect, we could continue to do business that we used to do before. But that type of business, Mr. Speaker, is what led us to the state that we reached, to the point that we had to get into a structural adjustment program. We had one before, we didn't succeed. We had a second one, we didn't succeed. This third one, we've done well, we're getting tremendously high marks. But if we go back the other road, there will be no attempt to rescue us again, Mr. Speaker. But Mr. Speaker, also, as required by the FRL, that the compliance report, it accompanies this bill that you see today, on the presentation of papers, the FROC report was laid before this House. So we have nothing to do with it. It's an independent committee. In fact, many countries, you might have a few countries around the world who have had a fiscal responsibility act. There were only 2 countries in the Caribbean who have done. But the only one that have a fiscal oversight committee that is independent, that reports directly to Parliament, is Grenada. In fact, the Prime Minister of Jamaica recently asked me, how is that going? Because they're obviously thinking of doing the same thing, but they want to be cautious to make sure that they will not be ending in some difficulties. I told him, well, so far it's 1 year of testing, so I don't want to tell him that he should definitely. I am convinced that we are doing the right thing, but we are not. Jamaica is not Grenada. Grenada is not Jamaica. So, but I told him, so far so good, and I'm very happy. I'm pleased with the work being done by the FROC Independent Committee. We don't necessarily agree with everything that's in the report, because the Act gives the government the right to respond to certain areas that we do not necessarily share same views, and you don't have to share the same views, but the facts are there, and we will in fact lay the facts as far as the government is concerned. Mr. Speaker, therefore, given what I have just indicated and the importance of this, what this is doing, Mr. Speaker, is making us be very responsible and transparent. While this government has all the seats in the House of Parliament, we do not believe that we should act in a way that demonstrates that we are not prepared to bring the information of our management of the economy to the people of the country. The FROC reports independently. That never happened before, even when we had opposition elements in the House of Representatives. The government is now presenting a supplementary estimate for the middle of the year, and it's saying we are not borrowing money, but we are saving from the local resources, activities of government. In addition, initiative on the international or regional community that we're raising external grants. A combination of those is what we're bringing here to continue to grow the economy and to provide further opportunities for Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I therefore ask this motion be approved, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable members, the question is that the Supplementary Appropriation Act number 1, 2018, for the period July 1st to December 31st, 2018, be approved. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes do have it.
Item 15, bills.
Honorable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to move the first reading of the bill entitled Supplementary Appropriation Number 1, Bill of 2018.
A bill for an act to appropriate an additional sum of $36,134,512.88 to the service of the state of Grenada for the period July 1st, 2018 to December 31st, 2018, shortly entitled Supplementary Appropriation Act Number 1, 2018.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the relevant standing order be suspended to take this bill through all the stages at this sitting.
Honorable members, the question is that the relevant standing orders of the House be suspended to enable the bill to be taken to all its stages at this sitting. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion, say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, in standing to move the second reading of this bill, I need to, since it's a money bill, I need to inform this Honorable House that we do have the Governor General consent to proceed.
Thank you.
Therefore, I move the second reading of this bill.
Honorable members, the question proposed is that the bill be read a second time. Honorable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, this is the bill that follows the motion that this Honorable House has just passed. So basically, the comments that I made on move on the motion would stand to support the statements that I would want to make as it relates to the second reading of this bill. So I take this opportunity to move the second reading of this bill. Anybody?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to give my full support to this bill and to point out that when grants received during the fiscal year, it must be brought onto the books. And so most of these here come through grant and therefore have to be allocated in the process. And Mr. Speaker, the $28.1 million for capital projects, that is where you will build on the economy, the growth in GDP will take place because you are spending $28.1 million in the next 6 months of the year. So that is money they could use to the washing program, the special projects, the needy assistance. These are money that are going to be spent in the economy. And so once you have this amount of money circulating in the economy, in addition to the $8 million on the recurrent side, $36.13 million from July to December, that is a lot of money that will be circulating within the economy for the 6 months, Mr. Speaker, and therefore we expect to see increased economic activity leading to increased growth. So I am extremely happy to see that we can do that without borrowing a cent, as indicated by the Minister of Finance. We could do this through grant and savings that we had, then and put it in projects that will see growth. I think we are in the right direction, and we will see an improvement in the GDP numbers. Mr. Speaker, therefore, I fully support this bill.
Thank you, Honorable Representative for St. David. Honorable members, Honorable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, just to a little bit of qualification, the member is absolutely right when he talks about the additional expenditure. And he did mention that it could have gone towards the bushing. But fortunately, again, for us, Mr. Speaker, the debushing amount is going to come from the recurrent expenditure already budgeted for. And the additional amount we're going to be in for the rest of the year, people will be working full time. So those who are saying, well, election come, no debushing, no needy assistance, no special project, wishing. Well, I'm telling you, the next 6 months of the year, Mr. Speaker, the debushers will be out full time. There'll be a very short break before budget, but there'll be literally almost 6 months of solid work for the rest of the year. And we'll be spending almost $16 million on the poorest people in the country will be able to have some income better than they had in the last 6 months, Mr. Speaker. And so while my friend, my colleague from St. David's made an appropriate comment, it's good for us, again, strengthen our hand, we don't have to use that capital expenditure item we talked about, the additional monies for the bushing, that is already taken care of. So it's going to be used for major capital programs, Mr. Speaker. And that is where the growth is going to come from, and opportunities, more jobs and more opportunities. So, Mr. Speaker, I again take this up and to move the second reading of this bill.
Honorable members, the question is that the bill entitled Supplementary Appropriation Act Number 1, Act 2018, be read a second time. Those who are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Bill for an act shortly entitled Supplementary Appropriation Number 1 Act 2018.
Honorable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I therefore move that the House resolve itself into a committee of the whole House to consider the bill clause by clause.
Honorable members, the question is that this Honorable House resolves itself into a committee of the whole House to consider the bill clause by clause. Those who are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honorable members, this House now stands in committee.
Clause 2, Appropriation.
Honorable members, the question is that Clause 2 forms part of the bill. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Schedule.
Honorable members, the question is that the schedule forms part of the bill. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Clause 1, short title.
Honorable members, the question is that the Clause 1 short title forms part of the bill. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the House resumes and the Chairman reports progress on the bill.
Honorable members, the question is that this Honorable House resumes and the Chairman of Committee reports progress on the bill. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honorable members, this Honorable House now resumes. I have to report that the bill was considered by a committee of the whole House and passed without amendments.
Mr. Speaker, therefore I move that the chairman's report be adopted.
Honorable members, the question is that the chairman's report be adopted. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honorable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I therefore move the third reading and passage of this bill.
Honorable members, the question proposes that the bill Supplementary Appropriation Number 1 Act 2018 be read a third time. Honorable members, the question is that the bill be read a third time and passed. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
A bill for an act shortly entitled Supplementary Appropriation Number 1 Act 2018.
Honorable Representative for St. David, for St. John.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I beg to introduce for first reading a bill for an act shortly entitled
the Non-Biodegradable Waste Control Bill 2018.
A bill for an act to regulate the use of the non-biodegradable products, shortly entitled Non-Degradable Waste Control Act 2018.
Honorable, I wish to advise that at this time we would stop at the first reading, proceed to adjourn for lunch, because it is now after 1 o'clock, and return to consider the remainder of the bill, on the other bills.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Not in any way going against your ruling. Just, Mr. Speaker, I think both the Ministry for Tourism and the Ministry for the Environment really had made the plan to go at a particular time, because we have the nation and some very interested personnel from various organizations. So, Mr. Speaker, if it is only possible that you could just allow him to do the presentation, we'll be very grateful. The decision is yours, Mr. Speaker. There are some people here from the hotel and other industry. So we know we have to break, but if we could only make the presentation and then we break. How many minutes?
Okay.
How many minutes?
I would want to confer, but after they have left, I'm looking at our quorum. We have to tread very cautiously there. So, honorable members, I crave your indulgence if you can hold firm to the stomach and don't let it grumble too much. We would proceed so as to facilitate the honorable parliamentary representatives. You may proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the relevant standing orders of the House be suspended to enable the bill to be taken through all its stages at this sitting.
Honorable members, the question is that this relevant standing orders of the House be suspended to enable the bill to be taken through all its stages at this sitting. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Yeah. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the second reading of the bill.
Honorable members, the question proposes that the bill be read a second time. Honorable Representative.
Mr. Speaker, today is a watershed moment for the state of Grenada. I'm saying this because of the importance of this proposed bill for the health and well-being of our people. This bill seeks to regulate the use of non-biodegradable products for one main reason, or two main reasons: to reduce the negative impacts on the environment and to improve the health of our people. Mr. Speaker, Grenada is a small island developing state in the Caribbean region and has joined the call to beat styrofoam and plastic pollution. As a ministry, we take notice of the call from various groups of concerned citizens as they point out the harmful effects of these items on our environment. Our population is becoming more and more health conscious, and the call to ban expanded polystyrene containers, referred to as styrofoam containers, and plastics, including straws, is becoming louder and louder. These products are the most commonly used type of containers for sale of food beverages, but the truth is they are non-biodegradable. They also contain substances that are harmful to human health when ingested. Our ministry is pleased to introduce to Parliament the Non-Biodegradable Waste Control Bill 2018, seeking to effect control of specified non-biodegradable products by establishing prohibitions at 3 levels. The first one is prohibition of the importation and manufacture of these products. Second, the sale and offer for sale of these products. And third, prohibition of sale and offer for sale of food in or with these products. The quantity of plastics that is being used is enormous, and the island has no recycling facilities. In addition, the plastics is harmful to the marine environment. Grenada is a peaceful tourism destination branded under the theme, Pure Grenada, the Spice of the Caribbean. To have plastic bottles in drainage and other places in and around the country is quite unsightly and goes against the brand of our destination. So, Mr. Speaker, we will continue our dialogue with importers and food vendors about the timeline for implementation of the new policy. Mr. Speaker, the process involved 16 importers, and I take this opportunity to thank them for the feedback and attendance to the meetings. We must tackle all types of pollution in order to ensure that future generations enjoy our island paradise. So we count on the goodwill of all to make this happen. Mr. Speaker, we are known for leading the charge in regional and international circles about sustainable development and climate change. At the home front, we implement programs at the community level to demonstrate how we adapt to climate change. Mr. Speaker, we have a serious challenge on our hands with the landfills at Perseverance and the landfill in Carriacou. These landfills, right now, Mr. Speaker, they are bursting, they are overflowing with plastics. This is not sustainable. And I can relate to all the drivers who pass by Perseverance, at the smell that you get and the unhealthy situation that's there right now. And as you could see, Mr. Speaker, you could see that the other products there are degraded dust, but you could still see all the black and white plastic still in Perseverance. So we know that and it's not going anywhere soon. Mr. Speaker, styrofoam was welcomed to the world many years ago as an innovative product. It is cheap, lightweight, and easy to use. And this product was invented by researchers in 1941. And the company that manufactures this product holds the trademark in 95 countries. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, they are very well marketed, and as I said, the task is huge, but we, Mr. Speaker, we are proposing that to support this ban on styrofoam. Grenada is taking a page from Guyana and Antigua and Barbuda as it comes to banning the styrofoam, the use of styrofoam and plastics. In Guyana, the ban on styrofoam took effect from the 1st January 2016, and in Antigua and Barbuda, it took effect in July 2017. The global production of plastic, Mr. Speaker, is 14 million tons per year, and that is much larger than Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique combined. So, Mr. Speaker, it is reported that styrofoam has two forms. The expanded polystyrene, example, the cups, plates, food containers, and what we call the packing material we call the popcorn. And then it has the solid polystyrene, which is like you see in the plastic forks, CDs, DVD cases, etc. The polystyrene means many styrene, and styrene is classified as a known hazardous substance because it contains styrene and benzene. The industrial process to manufacture styrofoam ranks as the 5th largest creator of toxic liquid and solid waste in the United States. Polystyrene, Mr. Speaker, is non-biodegradable. This means that it will not break down for 500 to 1,000 years. Even though it might break up in small pieces, the quantity in storage is increasing and there is no way to get rid of it. This is a serious matter and we must take action now. Once the product reaches the landfill, it leaches into our drinking water and also it seeps into our seas. It is dangerous for human health and it has already entered our food chains. We know that turtles and fish, they would eat little pieces of it, and then we in turn would get it into our system by consuming fish. So we are polluting our bodies as those tiny little particles will affect our health because it remains in the soil and in the water. It is therefore affecting the land and marine environment. Plastic is light, so the wind blows it all around. It blows it to the drain, the rivers, and it ends up into the sea. Also, Mr. Speaker, if we put, anytime you put like hot food in it, barbecue or whatever it is, it starts melting, and that substance gets into our system. So, Mr. Speaker, the exposure to those harmful chemicals is not only when we buy the foodstuff, but it also, sometimes when we're heating things in it, you inhale it, and even by touching the product. Mr. Speaker, when we all put out our garbage for solid waste management to collect, and we do that on a weekly basis, and the authority is offering an essential service to us, and it is our responsibility to find ways to reduce waste that's going into our landfill. So, Speaker, there are many restaurants and bars in Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique, and we want to ensure that when the patrons buy their food, sometimes you buy it from the restaurants, it should be KFC or other products, or even locally, we buy things like pig sauce, mannish water, crab, whatever it is, and they put it in those containers. So we are asking people to be conscious of that, and we want to move away from putting all these chemicals in our system. So, Mr. Speaker, this bill will be a new page in history. We need to push the envelope for recycling, waste reduction, diversion, awareness, and education to encourage innovation. Mr. Speaker, the timeline of implementation of this new regulation were discussed with different stakeholders, and our ministry is in dialogue with the Customs and Excise Department to establish a tariff breakout for these items that will be prohibited and the items that will become its alternatives. Because, Mr. Speaker, we're also looking at replacing those items with biodegradable products, like used with bamboo or products made from cane labas. So there is alternatives that we are working with the importers to replace those plastic with. So in closing, Mr. Speaker, this bill will be successful if all of us embrace it for the sake of our own health, our children and grandchildren, and a nation that does not care about what happens to future generations, we know it's doomed. So, Mr. Speaker, we want to take this initiative to ban these unhealthy substances, and we're hoping that with the passage of this bill, we would have a safer and healthier environment.
Honourable Representative Fossenbach and Minister
Mr. Speaker, I will support this bill, but my intention for standing here, I know we're going to break to lunch. I just wanted to beg your indulgence to recognize some people who have been very instrumental in pushing us to get to this level, and they may not be here after lunch, so I just wanted to beg my colleagues' indulgence as well to allow me to recognize the GHTA and Mr. Ross Fielding, who has pushed me and embarrassed me beyond belief over the many months. Every time I know I have to meet with him, I know that question will arise. I want to thank him and his daughter and all of the GHTA for their involvement in this matter, and also the staff of the Grenada Tourism Authority. There are a number of them here who came knowing that this bill will be raised, so I want to extend appreciation to them as well. The whole staff, the CEO, the Board of Tourism, who have, again, not let me rest on this matter. Mr. Speaker, the ministry staff were here, a few of them had to leave, so I just wanted to thank them for their support, and I will do my presentation in support of this bill after lunch. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Parliamentary Representative, and I too express my thanks to all those who pushed for that to happen. I started planting bamboo, and I wanted a market for my bamboo. So I thank you, I join with the House in thanking you. Honorable members, I think you would permit us now to eat. And so this House now stands adjourned for 1 hour. We will be back here at 2:30. At 2:30. We're back at 2:30. That's 1 hour.
Mr. Speaker, if we could announce just for the public, the media houses that we're carrying this so that those who leave here now can go straight and tune in to the various radio stations. Maybe they can search, but I don't know if the clerk is aware. GIS. Yes. I think all of us can get GIS, so please, if we go to get a real FM, just tune in and you'll hear the contribution from the minister. Please, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Please do.
Yes.
This House now stands adjourned until 2:30.